Chapter 1453. Hum! The sound of swords reverberated between heaven and earth, shaking the heavens. The blood-robed elder's face turned pale instantly. He raised his head to look at the void and felt beams of dazzling golden light falling down, almost blinding him. Then, an indescribably terrifying sword aura descended from the sky, as if it was about to shatter the heavens. "Oh no!" The blood-robed elder roared and leaped into the sky. Instead of dodging, he took the initiative to meet the sword aura. He could feel that if the sword aura fell, Yushwani and Lin Yan would most likely die, even if he could barely survive. Guardians were supposed to protect the Tao in the face of death. It was their duty and responsibility. "Shwani, run!" The blood-robed elder roared. He had yet to see the person who attacked. However, the sword aura had clearly transcended the shackles of the heavenly Tao. Its power could shake an immortal god. Third Grandpa. Yushwani's expression changed drastically. She looked up blankly, only to see swords falling from the sky like a torrent. Moreover, each of the ancient swords was surrounded by endless holy will. How was this possible? Who could be so powerful? The Blood Feather tribe was the most powerful tribe in the 9 states. However, even the Blood Feather tribe, which used to be the Azure Sky tribe, only had 3 holy artifacts. The rest had been destroyed by the Realm Lord. And now, the ancient swords that filled the sky were all holy artifacts. More importantly, an ordinary Saint Stage powerhouse could easily wield a Saint artifact. However, using 2 holy artifacts at the same time would exhaust their spiritual energy. But now, ridiculous! This was an immortal miracle. Plop! The sound of people kneeling and kowtowing could be heard from the peak of the mountain. Both the disciples of the Immortal Sect and the sect master of the Immortal Sect were shocked. Moreover, any one of the 100 swords seemed to have the power to kill a saint. The sword aura was like mist from the depths of the primordial chaos. It was impossible to break free from it, and it was impossible to resist. At the very least, this sword aura was enough to become a god in the 9 states. Hum! Around the blood-robed elder, a bloody radiance erupted. On his back, a pair of blood-red feathers spread out, covering thousands of miles. Every single feather was filled with a vast amount of blood-red chi. Then, the moment the blood feather flapped, blood-red ripples appeared in the air and surged toward the 100 swords like waves. Rumble! The moment the 2 attacks collided, the entire void was annihilated by the spiritual might. The blood-robed old man was worthy of being a member of the Blood Feather clan. He was actually able to resist the suppression of dozens of sword intents by himself. However, moments later, when the last 10 ancient swords slashed down from the sky, they directly pierced through all the blood patterns in the sky. With unparalleled dominance, they wiped out all the blood in the world. No, impossible! The blood-robed elder's eyes widened, and there was only endless fear left in his heart. "I am the 3rd elder of the Blood Feather race, Yu Huatian. You dare to kill me? Blood Feather race, Demon King Palace Yu. Pucci!" Before the blood-robed old man could finish speaking, his body was pierced by the dozens of swords. There was not a single part of him that was left unscathed from head to toe. Even his divine soul was cut into pieces by the torrential sword aura. Gulp! The world fell silent. The entire Immortal Form sect was so silent that one could hear a pin drop. At this moment, whether it was Lin Yan, Yushwani, or the Immortal Form sect master, their faces were filled with shock and fear. A 5th-grade sage, who stood at the peak of the 9 states, was slashed into nothingness by a single attack. How terrifying! "Let's go!" Yushwani's eyes were solemn. She did not dare to linger for a moment. She immediately grabbed Lin Yan's hand, and the blood feather appeared behind her. The aura of a 7th-grade venerable was undoubtedly revealed. However, just as she took a step forward and was about to leave this place, a series of strange sounds came from all around the mountain peak. Kacha kacha! Hearing the sound, everyone was stunned again. When they turned around, they saw that the space within 100 miles was covered by endless ice crystals. It was like a crystal prison that sealed everything and suppressed everything. Yushwani's face changed drastically. At this moment, she felt that the spiritual power and bloodline in her body were showing signs of being frozen by the ice. Right at this moment, a palm print suddenly descended from the sky. An ancient and boundless aura was quietly awakened. The palm print seemed to be filled with thousands of divine runes. Every trace and every strand contained an unparalleled domineering aura that transcended this world. No, Yushwani was terrified. She had never felt such fear before. She did not expect that such a terrifying existence would descend upon the immortal form sect. Whether it was the sword aura or the palm print, they had surpassed the shackles of the heavenly Tao. In fact, to put it bluntly, the owner of this palm print probably had the power to destroy the world. How was this possible? Who was it? At this moment, Lin Yan, who was beside her, suddenly broke free from her grasp. He turned his head and looked deeply at her before he softly said, "Xian Yi, thank you for accompanying me for the past 3 years. This time, let me block all the calamities for you." "Brother Lin Yan." Yushwani was slightly taken aback. Just as she was about to reach out and grab his hand, she saw that he had already taken a step forward and charged towards the palm print. Layers of flame crystals covered his body. He was like a glazed war god, emitting a dazzling light. I don't believe that I, Lin Yan, will lose twice in the immortal form sect." Lin Yan roared at the sky. His aura had undergone an earth-shattering change. The flame spirit battle body was the most mysterious body constitution in the world. Even a sage would have a hard time penetrating this flame crystal defense, let alone someone of the same cultivation level. He had already guessed that the person who had descended upon him was a true expert from the upper world. But he was not afraid, because all the trials that could not kill him would only make him stronger. However, the moment Lin Yan's figure came into contact with the palm print, the battle intent on his face froze. Then, everyone saw that the young man who had crushed Hua Fei earlier could not be said to be powerless to retaliate. It could only be said that he did not even have the opportunity to attack. He was directly smashed by the palm print from the sky, smashing the entire bluestone square beneath him into pieces. Dust flew everywhere. The immortal form sect was dead silent. This series of attacks was simply too shocking. Even the immortal form sect master had the misconception that he would be crushed by this palm, let alone an exalted realm cultivator. Peak sage stage? The person who had attacked must be an expert from the upper world, possibly a peak sage stage expert. No, Brother Lin Yan! Yushwani cried out and was about to rush into the dust. But at this moment, a divine light shot out from the horizon. Then, a figure appeared in the sky. Chapter 1454. At the end of the sky, rays of light shone brightly. A black-clothed figure slowly walked over, looking handsome and spirited. There was a gentle and easygoing smile on her flawless face. Beneath his feet, golden lotuses of the great Tao bloomed. The river of stars stretched for thousands of miles. He's an immortal. Countless disciples of the immortal form sect were dumbfounded. Some of the female disciples even suddenly closed their legs together, and their faces were flushed red. Even Hua Fei and Yushwani had their mouths slightly agape, their faces filled with shock. It was too perfect. The young man in front of them seemed to have walked out of a dream. His every move was filled with desire. However, before the crowd could recover from their shock, 3 more figures appeared behind the young man. In the next moment, the entire immortal form sect was filled with gasp. With the beauty of Yi Qinchan and the other 2, they would be a disaster even in the Azure continent, let alone in this desolate lower realm. The 3 women walked together, but each of them had their own unique aura. It was too much for the eyes to take in. In fact, many of the immortal sex prides felt incomparably inferior and ashamed. Perhaps, only such a fairy was worthy of that black-clothed young master. But something was wrong. The attacks just now all contained enough power to kill a saint. In the immortal form sect master's opinion, those who were capable of unleashing such an attack were most likely elders or guardians of the sect. But no matter how he looked at it, the four of them were of the current generation. Didn't that mean their strength? Hiss! You, how dare you kill my brother Lin Yan? My blood feather tribe, Yu Xuanyi's lips trembled. She felt a chill rising from the bottom of her feet. However, before she could finish speaking, she saw the green-clothed woman beside the black-clothed youth suddenly frown, and a white hand suddenly stretched out. Yu Xuanyi's expression changed drastically. A pair of blood feathers extended behind her. However, right at this moment, layers of white mist suddenly rose in the surrounding space. A bone-piercing chill spread. The entire world froze at a speed visible to the naked eye. Wherever the cold mist passed, the space became as bright and transparent as ice crystals. But when Yu Xuanyi saw this, the last glimmer of hope in her eyes disappeared. Such strength wasn't something that an Exalt Realm expert like her could resist at all. Furthermore, there was simply no way to break free. In the blink of an eye, Yu Xuanyi's body was enveloped by the cold mist and froze. Then, when Yi Qingchan's jade-like hand pressed down, she shattered into pieces. Gulp! The immortal form sect master and the other disciples swallowed their saliva when they saw this. Too ruthless. He was the young master of the Blood Feather clan, one of the 3 god clans in the 9 regions. It was actually shattered by a single slap? One had to know that these 3 god clans were clans that had once contended against a sector lord. Even though the powerhouses of the 3 clans and their foundations had been completely destroyed, the most noble bloodline of the upper realm still flowed in their bodies. Back when the Sage Emperor had unified the 9 states, he had been extremely respectful to the 3 god clans. There were even rumors that behind the Sage Emperor was the most mysterious of the 3 races, the Black Demon race. Cough, cough! At this moment, a coughing sound came from where the dust had dispersed. Ling Xiao wasn't surprised at all when he heard the sound. On the other hand, Yi Qingchan, Wei Yang, and Su Yan's eyes flickered with a trace of disbelief. With the young master's strength, even a first-level Saint Realm expert would have been shattered into pieces, let alone a first-level Exalt. Could it be that Ling Yan had been hiding his strength? Finally, when the dust settled, a figure appeared in front of everyone's eyes. At this moment, the flame crystal outside Ling Yan's body had completely shattered. There were countless cracks all over it, and it was a shocking sight. Along with it, his invincible Dao heart and bones were also shattered. However, with his strength, there was no way he could withstand the might of Ling Zhao's palm. It was obvious that he was hiding other secrets. Xuanyi, Ling Yan struggled to get up from the ground. He looked around blankly, but he didn't see Yu Xuanyi's figure. A trace of disappointment flashed across his heart. Let me see how many more of my palms you can take. Ling Xiao smiled and swung his palm again. An ear-piercing buzzing sound spread for thousands of miles, and a sky-covering palm print appeared again. The stronger Ling Yan was, the more shocking his secret was, and the happier Ling Xiao would be. Damn it! Looking at the palm falling from the sky, Ling Yan gritted his teeth, and a trace of determination appeared in his eyes. Above his head, a bronze fragment appeared. There were thousands of divine runes on it, and it contained great mysteries. The moment Ling Zhao's palm landed, a strand of immortal intent suddenly spread out from the bronze fragment. It turned into a celestial shadow and covered Ling Yan's body. Tens of thousands of rays of light shot into the sky, and an ancient diagram appeared in the celestial shadow's eyes. Clang! However, even though the immortal shadow was filled with boundless divine might, it had a boundless and ancient aura. The moment Ling Zhao's palm landed, the light dimmed, and it turned back into a bronze fragment. Pucci! Ling Yen staggered and knelt on the ground. Blood spurted out of his mouth, and his aura was extremely weak. Is there really no other way? He lowered his head and trembled. He held a white spiritual jade in his hand, and finally, he crushed it. Buzz! Instantly, a strand of divine soul fluctuations surged out and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Ling Xiao raised his eyebrows, and the smile on his face widened. It seemed that the secret of the Son of Providence lay in the bronze fragment. The immortal will contained within the fragment was indeed a little shocking. It was obvious that the fragment had a history. According to Ling Xiao's guess, the only thing in the lower realm that was related to immortals was the relic of the sinful celestial that Su Qingshan had mentioned. As for the strand of divine soul that Ling Yen had used, Ling Xiao had sensed it long ago, but he did not stop it. In the land of the 9 states, the most powerful people were only in the sage state, so he did not have to worry as much as Qing Tsang. No matter who Lin Yen was asking for help from, the only outcome was death. Moreover, it would save Ling Xiao a lot of trouble if Ling Yen lured the enemy over. With that thought, Ling Xiao smiled. He descended from the sky, and divine runes circled around his palms. The aura of the world destroyer Dao Law destroyed the immortal opportunity on the fragment. Then, he held it in his hand. Buzz! As the fragment was in his hand, Ling Xiao felt a surge of energy similar to the origin of immortals surging toward him, and a celestial palace seemed to appear in front of him. At the end of the celestial palace, a figure stood with his hands behind his back. He was so ethereal that he looked like a dream. There seemed to be a force guiding him in a certain direction. Chapter 1455. The Immortal Graveyard? Ling Xiao's eyes glinted. He seemed to have guessed something. If this bronze shard was the key to finding the immortal graveyard, did that mean that he would be able to open the immortal graveyard and obtain the fortune within? Anyone who could obtain the bronze shard would definitely be someone with great fortune. In other words, the key to opening the immortal graveyard was a group of people with great fortune killing each other. The one who survived would become the true child of destiny of this world. Interesting, Ling Xiao was looking forward to finding out what the bronze shard was made of. A mere shard was able to resist his attack when used by a first-rank exalted realm cultivator. What kind of power would it be if he could gather all the shards? This. Young master, may I ask? The Immortal Form Sect master and the others gathered around Ling Xiao, their faces filled with respect and fear. Hua Fei in particular, had a look of gratitude on her face. If not for Ling Xiao's appearance, she would have ended up in a pitiful state. However, if this young master knew what she had done, would he punish her? Ling people, Ling Xiao. Ling Xiao said indifferently and looked down at Ling Yen. Find a pillar and tie him up. Yuxuani's fortune wasn't high, but it was still at least 1,000. Although he was killed by Yi Qingchan, Ling Xiao was pleasantly surprised to find that the fortune was also attributed to him. In other words, if these people with great fortune killed the child of destiny, Ling Xiao would also be rewarded. If Ling Yen could rely on him at the brink of death, he definitely wouldn't be a good-for-nothing. It was very likely that he was also a person with great fortune. Of course, waiting for someone to show up was the most comfortable thing to do. After all, those who had a bit of luck were mostly arrogant, conceited, and upright people. They would never leave their friends in the lurch. Otherwise, it would be wrong. Ling people? Young master is here. Our Immortal Form sect is going to prosper. The Immortal Form sect master and the others narrowed their eyes as their faces turned slightly red from excitement. Even though they didn't know what the words Ling people meant, they didn't know. However, according to the will of their ancestors, the Immortal Form sect was the slaves of the Ling people, and they swore loyalty to them to the death. Of course, no matter what status the Ling people had now, they were still a force from the upper realm. A mere blood feather clan was not worth mentioning. Young master, it's all my fault. Everything that happened today was caused by Fei. I have spoiled young master's mood, Hua Fei pursed her red lips tightly. At this time, she did not dare to covet Ling Xiao in the slightest. She was very scheming and would do anything to go further on the path of immortality. However, this did not mean that she did not know her own limit. Compared to Yi Qinchan and the other two girls, her looks and talent were too mediocre. Don't worry, you did well. Ling Xiao smiled inexplicably and walked toward the main hall. Behind him, Hua Fei's pretty face froze. She was clearly at a loss. Did well? Young master, are you serious? In the main hall of the Immortal Form sect, Ling Xiao sat on the main seat and looked at the people below him with a gentle expression. Young master, do you want me to lead the Immortal Form sect and trample the Lin family to the ground? In the main hall, the Immortal Form sect master's face was cold and arrogant. The Blood Feather clan was not to be trifled with, even if they were beaten to death. After all, the Blood Feather clan had several saints, and each of them had terrifying battle strength. Even if Lord Ling Xiao was outstanding, the Immortal Form sect would most likely become cannon fodder if they became enemies with the Blood Feather clan. However, wouldn't the Lin family of Prung Prefecture be easily destroyed? No need. Ling Xiao shook his head. Based on Lin Yan's appearance, he did not have a good relationship with the Lin family. Not to mention, Lin Wuji was killed by Yu Xuani. Therefore, the Lin family would only be grateful to Ling Xiao for killing Lin Yan. They would not complain at all. The ancestral land of the Blood Feather clan should be in the central Ning Prefecture, right? Yes. Young master, the Blood Feather clan is one of the 3 major god clans. They have a deep foundation, and they occupy one of the most prosperous prefectures in the 9 prefectures, Ning Prefecture. They have a longer lifespan than human cultivators, and it is said that they have many ancestors. Gather the disciples. In 2 days we will destroy the Blood Feather clan. Ling Zhao's expression was calm, and there was not much emotion on his face. How dare these 3 sinners, whose lineages had been severed, call themselves gods? Ridiculous. But, yes. Just as the Immortal Form sect master was about to speak, he saw Ling Zhao's eyes turn cold, and an invisible force came crashing down, almost crushing him to the ground. Young master, that Lin Yan, I will spare his life for now. Ling Xiao raised his head and looked outside the hall. At this moment, Lin Yan's figure was tied to a stone pillar by a group of Immortal Form sect disciples. He looked like a sinner waiting to be executed. Only by being alive could he attract the attention of the mastermind. This was the reason why Ling Xiao did not kill him. This time, Ling Xiao did not come to the lower realm just to harvest the heaven's will of the lower realm. Lin Yan's backer was most likely a young master from the upper realm. To Ling Xiao, these people were all on his menu. At the same time, on a sacred mountain in the center of Ning province. This mountain was completely blood-red. A bloody mist rose from it, covering the sky and revealing a terrifying aura. This was the forbidden area of Ning province, where the Blood Feather clan resided. Everyone in the 9 province knew about this clan. They were an ancient clan from the upper realm with a long history and a deep foundation. There were many experts in the clan, including several saints, and all of them were above the 4th level of the saint realm. In this desolate lower realm, such strength was already at the peak of the world, and no one dared to challenge their authority. However, 900 years ago, the Blood Feather clan was in turmoil, and Yu Xuani was wandering outside at that time. 300 years ago, she was adopted by Lin Yan's father. On the surface, Yu Xuani looked like a child, but she was older than Lin Yan's father. What? Xuani's life jade is broken? Investigate. At this moment, an angry roar suddenly rang out from the peak of the sacred mountain. The bloody clouds within thousands of miles shook, and countless ancient auras seemed to be awakening. Out of guilt, the Lord of the Blood Feather clan had granted Yu Xuani's every request ever since he found her. Even the bronze fragment that Lin Yan had fused with was obtained by Yu Xuani from her father. Although the Lord of the Blood Feather clan knew that the item was extremely precious, The immortal intent in the fragment was extremely resistant to the aura of the Bloodfeather clan, so he could not refine it. In the end, this treasure related to the immortal graveyard fell into Lin Yan's hands. It was also because of this that he had reawakened his divine body and reached the peak of his life. Clan Lord. Just as the Lord of the Bloodfeather clan was about to explode, a blood-robed elder suddenly walked into the hall. I heard from Yu Huatian that the young lady and a young man named Lin Yan went to the Immortal Form sect in Feng Province. Now that their life jade is broken, it is very likely. You mean that the Immortal Form sect killed Xuani and the third elder? The Lord of the Bloodfeather clan frowned, killing intent swirling in his eyes. With Yu Huatian's strength, he should not have died so easily at the hands of the Immortal Form sect. However, in the entire Feng province, only the Immortal Form sect was capable of killing the third elder. How dare the Immortal Form sect make an enemy of the Bloodfeather clan? Grand Elder, quickly gather the other 4 elders and follow me to the Immortal Form sect. Chapter 1456. Yes, clan leader. The first elder of the Bloodfeather tribe bowed, and was about to leave when a look of hesitation appeared in his eyes. By the way, clan leader, there's news from the Demon King Palace that a lord from the upper world is interested in joining forces with us and will be arriving in Ning Prefecture soon. Demon King Palace? The clan leader of the Bloodfeather tribe frowned and hesitated. Although this faction was not as powerful as the 3 god tribes, it was still one of the top factions in the 9 prefectures. The ancient mountains and rivers of Ing Prefecture had always been occupied by powerful demons. The Demon King Palace was founded by a few powerful demons. Of course, the Demon King Palace alone was not enough for the Bloodfeather tribe to be afraid of. However, the Bloodfeather tribe had to be cautious when dealing with a powerful being from the upper world. Although the Bloodfeather tribe had the noblest bloodline from the upper world, the tribe had declined under the suppression of the heavenly Tao of the world of dead souls. A force from the upper world that could be addressed as a lord by the Demon King Palace was probably not simple. However, the clan leader of the Bloodfeather tribe was slightly puzzled. Why would someone from the upper world choose to join forces with the Bloodfeather tribe? One should know that the Black Demon clan had the deepest foundation among the 3 divine clans. The clan with the most clansmen was the Green Ghost clan. No matter how one looked at it, they were the best choice for allies. Something was wrong. There must be a reason for this abnormality. Clan leader, why don't I lead the elders to the Immortal Form sect to investigate the cause of young lady's death? Why don't you stay in the tribe and wait for the Demon King Palace to arrive? The first elder, Yu Huaji, said in a low voice. The clan leader of the Bloodfeather tribe shook his head. It won't take more than 3 days to destroy the Immortal Form sect. There's still time. Yes. Yu Huaji's eyes turned cold, but he did not say anything else. A day passed in the blink of an eye. In front of the Immortal Form sect's main hall, the blood on Lin Yan's body had already dried up. It was just that his bones had long been shattered by Ling Zhao's palm, and were completely unable to heal. That's right. Before he came to the Immortal Form sect, he had met someone from the upper world who tried to recruit him. That person claimed to have come from an immortal inheritance. His power was enormous, and even in the upper realm, he was an existence second to none. On the other hand, Lin Yan's talent was simply too heaven-defying. It would be a pity for him to stay in the lower plane. However, although Lin Yan yearned for the upper realm, he could not let go of his hatred for Hua Fei and Lin Wuji. Therefore, he was not in a hurry to agree. Instead, he wanted to personally take revenge before making a decision. However, he did not expect that a simple counterattack would attract a terrifying existence like Ling Xiao. If Lin Yan was not wrong, the young man in black should also be from the upper realm. Therefore, he crushed the spirit jade in an attempt to save his life. Lin Yan felt a little ashamed of himself for doing this. However, only by staying alive could he prove himself, and only then could he trample all these enemies who had brought him shame to death. Buzz. Until, at the end of the world, streams of light suddenly flickered. Soon after, countless powerful auras appeared in the sky above the immortal form sect. The leader was a young man in white. He had a handsome face and an awe-inspiring noble aura. Behind him were 4 young men and women. Behind the 5 of them was an old man in a gray robe. The auras of these 6 people were extremely powerful, especially the young man in white. Although he was slightly older, he was not more than 1,000 years old. However, his body seemed to contain a trace of holy will. Lin Yen. When the young man in white saw Lin Yen trapped in the middle of the square and his aura weakened, a murderous intent appeared on his face. In his opinion, there was no need to worry about the lower plane. Even the 3 sinners would not dare to make an enemy out of him. Since Lin Yen had crushed the spirit jade he left behind, it meant that he had agreed to join the sect behind him. Today, he was here to show Lin Yen his strength. Brother Qiao. Lin Yen raised his head with difficulty, his eyes trembling. Although he did not know why the young man in black did not kill him. However, the arrival of the people in front of him moved him somewhat. At this moment, Lin Yen did not know that Yuxuani had died at the hands of Yi Qinchan. He only thought that she had escaped in the chaos. In Lin Yan's opinion, Yuxuani would not abandon him so easily. She had most likely left to call for reinforcements. With the protection of the Blood Feather tribe and these people from the upper plane, the young man in black would not dare to act recklessly. Who is it? Who dares to injure you to this extent? The young man in white and the others descended from the sky, their faces filled with resentment. At this moment, he could feel that the spiritual energy in Lin Yan's body had been completely suppressed, and his vitality was dissipating. Even with his combat body, it would be an extremely slow process for him to recover from such a serious injury. Brother Qiao, don't worry. No matter who it is, I will personally avenge you today. The young man in white snorted, his aura domineering. However, as soon as he finished speaking, he saw several figures walking over from the distant hall. Among them was a peerless figure in black. His eyes narrowed, and he felt an indescribable sense of unease. Avenge you! Ling Zhao's lips curled up, his expression extremely gentle. At this moment, he could see that the young man in white was indeed blessed with providence. The number of 7,000 was similar to Lin Yan's, and he had a strange bloodline. Although neither of them had reached the level of the Child of Destiny, they were still flesh and blood. Moreover, these geniuses from the upper plane were Ling Zhao's potential enemies. Ling people wanted to destroy the Realm Lord's palace and stand tall in the sky. They were bound to become enemies with the heavens and earth. No matter what the imperishable lineages would choose in the end, the more talented their peers were, the better it was better for them to die. After all, in the hearts of their respective sects, they were the opportunity to fight for the heavens. What Ling Xiao wanted to do was to break these opportunities with his own hands. In the end, he would win the hearts of all. You are the young master of the Ling people, Ling Xiao? The white-clothed young man's eyes were solemn as he instantly guessed Ling Zhao's identity. There were less than 10 people in the current generation who could give him such pressure. Especially this young man's age. He looked extremely young. Other than those in the sequence, there was only one person in the entire Qing-Tsang continent who could have such a domineering aura, the young master of the Ling people, Ling Xiao. His black robe was peerless, and he looked like an immortal. He did not expect to meet such a difficult opponent in just 7 days in the lower plane. At the end of the day, there were only a few forces in the lower plane who had the strength to fight for the ultimate destiny. As for these powers, they were in opposing positions to begin with. Sometimes, the fight for destiny was also a fight for providence. Fortunately, in the lower plane, the most powerful cultivators were only in the Saint realm. Therefore, the threat of the Ling people was reduced. Since you recognize him, then it's easy. I want to know how you plan to avenge him? Ling Xiao smiled and sized up the 6 people in front of him. 2 saints and 4 revered planes. Although the gray-robed elder's strength was at the 8th level of the saint realm, it was still not worth mentioning in Ling Xiao's eyes. Young Master Ling, I am Qiao Shan from the Imperial Palace. I wonder if you can give me some face and spare the life of this little brother of mine? Just as Lin Yan's expression was gloomy and he was waiting for Brother Qiao to show off his skills, Brother Qiao suddenly bowed and said respectfully. Chapter 1457. Brother Qiao. Lin Yan's mouth was slightly agape, his eyes filled with confusion. Even the immortal form sect master behind Ling Xiao was a little taken aback at this moment. They had all sensed the aura of the gray-robed old man. An 8th grade sage stage expert was practically unparalleled in the 9 prefectures. Even the immortal form sect did not have a single person who could match him. Logically speaking, with such an expert following him, the white-robed young man should have been arrogant. But why did he suddenly soften? 10-second-hand man? Suddenly, the immortal form sect master seemed to have guessed something. Perhaps he had underestimated this young master's deterrence from the start. No. At this moment, Ling Xiao was still smiling, but his tone was extremely straightforward. No wonder he was the current generation Imperial Jew. In Ling Xiao's opinion, Qiao Shan had most likely seen the power of Lin Yan's battle physique, and felt sympathetic towards him. It was no wonder. The flame crystals that covered his entire body were indeed a terrifying defense. It would be extremely difficult for someone of the same generation to break through such a defense. But it just so happened that Ling Xiao's combat strength had long since surpassed the scope of his peers. Qiao Shan's eyes narrowed. He clearly did not expect Ling Xiao to reject him so straightforwardly. Although the Taigu Ling people had an unparalleled foundation, the heavenly imperial palace was also an immortal. The 12 absolutes of the heavenly imperial palace were even more terrifying. Oh, it seemed like they were the current generation 9 absolute. Qiao Shan had already lowered himself to the extreme. Ling Xiao only needed to go with the flow and do him a favor, and this matter would be completely resolved. Wouldn't it be better to turn hostility into friendship and take care of each other with more friends? Lin Yan killed a disciple of the immortal form sect. He was rude and unreasonable. Do you have a problem with me punishing him? Ling Xiao's eyes were clear and his tone was cold. In the lower realm, he had fewer worries, but that did not mean he would lose his vigilance. Indiscriminately killing the innocent was an act of villains and devils. I, Ling Xiao, the light of righteousness, will kill you because you deserve to die. Of course, the most important thing was that he didn't have the confidence to kill an 8th grade saint stage expert in the world of souls. Under the watchful eyes of so many people, if someone wanted to frame him, it would be easy to find evidence. One had to know that he did not believe that no one from the Realm Lord Palace would come to such a lower realm that contained such a precious treasure. I wouldn't dare. Young Master Ling, what should I do for you to let Lin Yan go? Qiao Shan suppressed the anger in his heart and raised his head to look at the young man with unparalleled beauty. In the end, unless it was absolutely necessary, he didn't want to fall out with this young man too early. Everyone in Azure Sky knew about Ling Xiao's talent. But what Qiao Shan truly feared was that he had once shattered strength absolute King Yan with a single punch. Although Wang Yan's strength was not at the top of the 12 absolutes, his physical strength was extremely terrifying. However, he was still shattered by Ling Xiao's punch. Therefore, Qiao Shan was still somewhat fearful of Ling Xiao. What should I do? Ling Xiao frowned as if he was deep in thought. In the end, he shook his head with a solemn expression. Lin Yan must die. If you want to save him, you must defeat me. Otherwise, my Tao heart will not allow a traitor like him to live. What? Traitor of the sect? You're framing me. Lin Yan gritted his teeth in anger. Just as he was about to speak, he heard the immortal form sect master's cold voice. "Evil disciple, how dare you quibble?" As soon as he finished speaking, the true saint stage expert struck out with his palm and knocked Lin Yen unconscious. This, Qiao Shan and the others narrowed their eyes. The more they thought about it, the more they felt that things were not as simple as they seemed. They knew about Ling Zhao's temperament. His loyalty and righteousness were praised throughout the world. It was said that the young master of the Ling people had almost died on the day he was born in order to save the people of the lower realm. Could it be that the immortal form sect master had tricked him? Young Master Ling Xiao. Is there some kind of misunderstanding? Lin Yen colluded with the sinful blood feather tribe and killed their young master, Lin Wuji. You call this a misunderstanding? Ling Zhao's eyes were dark. Regardless of whether Qiao Shan was willing to fight or not, he had no intention of letting the current Yuju go. Colluding with the sinful blood feather tribe was not a big or small crime. It all depended on one's acting skills. Although the Realm Lord was missing, the Realm Lord Palace still controlled the Azure continent. As for the three great sinner clans, they had been suppressed here by the Realm Lord. The heavenly imperial palace was an immortal inheritance. If they colluded with the three great races, Ling Xiao would be able to uphold justice and kill them on the spot. What? The blood feather tribe? Qiao Shan's eyes trembled as he hesitated. However, when he thought about his agreement with Lin Yen, it would be a disgrace to his Dao heart if he left in such a sorry state. Phew! Finally, Qiao Shan took a deep breath and looked at Ling Xiao solemnly. Young Master Ling, if I can take Lin Yen away today, I will definitely ask him to cut off his ties with the blood feather tribe. What do you think? That depends on whether you have the ability to do so. Ling Xiao smiled faintly. The moment he stepped forward, hundreds of swords followed behind him. Excuse me. Based on Qiao Shan's understanding of Lin Yen, he would never betray the sect. Moreover, if Lin Yen was such a despicable person, he would have used this as a condition to destroy the immortal form sect. Wouldn't that be easier? Therefore, there must be some kind of misunderstanding. Lin Yan's battle constitution was hard to come by. As long as he could enter the Sage Realm, he would be invincible. On the path of the immortal Tao, the one with the biggest fist was the one with the right. As long as he could defeat Ling Xiao fair and square today, this storm would be completely settled. As for the blood feather tribe, they did not dare to step out of the world of dead spirit. As long as Lin Yen ascended to the upper world and saw the true vastness of the world, he would be able to let go of his worries. In the end, the higher a man stood, the higher the standard for choosing a partner. First love was beautiful, but the most suitable couple would always be the one who progressed together. Phew! Qiao Shan took a deep breath as the holy will around him surged. The vast expanse of blue sky was instantly destroyed, and his figure furiously rushed towards Ling Xiao. Buzz! The sound of swords suddenly rang out. Above the 100 swords, divine light shot into the sky and turned into a 1,000-foot-long sword shadow that slashed down from the sky. Instantly, a 10,000-mile-long crack appeared in the sky, intimidating the surroundings. Even the master of the blood feather tribe and the others, who were rushing over, suddenly stopped in their tracks. Their eyes were filled with fear. This is, tribe leader, I'm afraid the immortal form sect is very terrifying. Yu Huaji and the others sighed softly, their voices grave. In these chaotic times, evildoers ran rampant. A single misstep could lead to the destruction of one's tribe. When we reach the immortal form sect, we'll act according to the circumstances. The blood feather tribe leader frowned slightly. He could not let go of his hatred for his daughter and quickly headed toward the immortal form sect. Behind him, many blood feather tribe experts were hesitant, but there was nothing they could do. Boom! In the immortal form sect, sword aura fell. The laws of order converged into a river that covered the sky and earth, instantly enveloping Qiao Shan's figure. Chapter 1458. Boom! The tip of the sword shocked the world, cutting off the universe. On the other hand, Qiao Shan's eyes similarly revealed a wisp of seriousness. Ling Zhao's sword posture was known to all. He was known as the sword immortal of this generation. However, Qiao Shan only understood that the title of sword immortal was not just for show when he faced the torrential sword aura. At the very least, no one in this generation would be able to withstand such a terrifying sword aura. Pfft! Thousands of sword auras fell from the sky like a surging river, cutting the space within 100 miles into nothingness. However, Ling Xiao could feel a wisp of holy will quietly awakening wherever the sword radiance passed. It was like a reef in the wave. Although it was slightly small, it was still standing steadily and unperturbed. As expected of Yu Ju, his defense was the best in this generation. Ling Xiao looked calm as he looked at the place where the sword aura dissipated. A cold light lit up and Qiao Shan's figure appeared in everyone's sight. However, after seeing Qiao Shan's current state, Ling Xiao finally understood why Yu Ju of the Heavenly Imperial Mansion insisted on saving Lin Yan. He was also covered in layers of divine crystals, which were extremely dazzling. What was different from Lin Yan was that the divine crystal on his body was not red in color. Instead, it was transparent and sparkling like a crystal. Divine crystal bloodline? It was obvious that Qiao Shan's trump card was this strange bloodline. It was similar to Lin Yan's and was indestructible. Phew! After the sword aura dissipated, Qiao Shan heaved a sigh of relief and swallowed the mouthful of blood that was about to reach his mouth. Just now, he could feel that the divine crystals on his body showed signs of shattering. If the sword aura was a little stronger, he would have shattered along with the divine crystals. Master Ling Xiao, you have seen my strength. As the saying goes, no discord, no concord. Why don't we? Qiao Shan smiled gently and no longer had the arrogance from before. At this moment, he had a feeling that if they were to fight to the death, there was a high chance that he would not be able to defeat Ling Xiao. If this is what you're relying on, then you can die now. Ling Xiao's eyes were clear and did not show much emotion. Just now, he had only casually swung his sword and did not use any moves at all. Although Qiao Shan barely managed to block it, his aura was clearly weakened. Yu Ju was nothing more than this. What? Qiao Shan's eyes narrowed slightly as anger appeared on his face. Ling People's young master was too arrogant. But it seemed like it was impossible to stop halfway. If Qiao Shan admitted defeat now, this trip to the world of souls would end prematurely. Not only that, but his Dao heart and reputation would also be shattered. Ling Xiao, do you really want to fight me to the death? No matter how talented you are, the world of souls has just opened. Once you get hurt, humph. Qiao Shan snorted. He had a trump card that could only be used once in a short period of time. He could be said to be invincible in the Saint realm. Even if Ling Xiao could defeat him, he would have to pay the price. Buzz. However, this time, Ling Xiao did not waste any time. The moment he took a step forward, he appeared in front of Qiao Shan. In the next moment, he stretched out his hand and punched Qiao Shan's chest. To be honest, Qiao Shan was clearly a little confused. Ling Xiao actually gave up on the sword and used his physical strength to fight against him? One had to know that his divine crystal defense could even resist a sage weapon, let alone a mere physical strength. So what if you're an invincible immortal? You're still an immortal after all. The number of invincible realm experts who have been defeated by me is already uncountable. Qiao Shan roared furiously as he made up his mind. At this moment, he could only intimidate Ling Xiao and make him retreat. Divine force, absolute defense. Boom! In a short moment, thousands of divine patterns appeared on the ice crystal outside Qiao Shan's body. The patterns that were filled with pure gold colors were like the totems of immortals and God. They were filled with endless mysteries. Then, he punched out toward Ling Xiao. Crimson rays of light surrounded his arm, and the entire void cracked open at this moment. Senior brother Qiao actually used this divine technique right from the start. The remaining heavenly Imperial Mansion disciples looked at each other. Clearly, they did not expect Xiao Shan to use his greatest trump card at the beginning of the battle. Absolute defense was invincible. It was said that under this defense, the speed of the divine blood flowing in Xiao Shan's body would be 3 times faster than usual. In other words, the hardness of the divine crystal would be 3 times stronger, and his physical body would be comparable to a supreme being's. However, the weakness of this divine technique was equally obvious. Once the power in the divine blood was exhausted, Xiao Shan's body would be completely weak, and he would not be able to use any spiritual energy for a long time. It seemed that the young master of Ling people was also a powerful opponent. He was able to force senior brother Qiao to such a state. Boom! The moment their fists collided, the entire divine mountain seemed to be unable to withstand such divine power, and an ear-piercing buzzing sound erupted. On the square, cracks that were as thick as an arm spread out like a spider web. It was a ghastly sight. As for the spectating celestial sect disciples, they were all sent flying by the collision of the energy ripples. Some of the low-level disciples even had blood flowing out of their mouth. Ling Yan frowned slightly and opened his eyes in a daze. But what shocked everyone was that even after using such a divine technique, Xiao Shan was still sent flying. The arm that collided with Ling Xiao was completely shattered at this moment. Hiss! When he saw this scene, Lin Yan's eyes instantly widened. His swollen face was filled with fear. When he first met Xiao Shan, he had a brief confrontation with this monster from the upper realm. Brother Qiao's physical body could be said to be the most terrifying one among all the living beings he had ever seen. It was so hard. Even so, his arm was still shattered. How is this possible? At this moment, the horror in Xiao Shan's heart had already suppressed the intense pain from his arm. He really could not understand how his defense, which could not be broken even by a powerhouse at the peak of the Sage Realm, suddenly lost its power. In front of Ling Xiao, he was like an ant that could be casually squashed to death. Young Lord Ling. Xiao Shan's lips trembled slightly. Just as he was about to speak, he saw a black whirlpool suddenly appear in the young man's eyes. His figure appeared in front of Xiao Shan almost instantly. Qi and blood gushed out from the fist that was extended out. It was like a volcano that could suppress the 9 heavens and 10 earths. This fist was even more terrifying than the previous one. In fact, wherever the fist passed, Xiao Shan could see countless shadows of gods and demons shattering the heavens. In the blink of an eye, they were destroyed by a strange force. Before Xiao Shan could admit defeat, Ling Zhao's fist was already 3 feet away from his chest. Damn it! Xiao Shan's pupils constricted. All the hair on his body stood on end. He had a vague feeling that this Ling people's young lord was not sparring with him at all. Instead, he was seizing the opportunity to kill him. At this critical moment, Xiao Shan's eyes suddenly flashed with determination. The hand seals in his hands changed rapidly. The countless golden runes around his body immediately emitted a blood-red glow. Then, it filled Xiao Shan's entire body like a bloodline. Boom! Chapter 1459. This is on the square. The 4 heavenly Imperial Mansion's disciples were stunned. They suddenly felt uneasy. Especially the blood-colored divine crystal on Xiao Shan's body. It looked extremely evil and gave people a terrifying pressure. When the blood crystal appears, there is no life. Behind the 4 of them, the Saint Realm old man suddenly sighed softly. There was a hint of doubt in his eyes. Since Xiao Shan was already forced to such a state, why didn't he just admit defeat and executed such a forbidden technique instead? One had to know that this defense was infused with the power of divine blood into the blood crystal. It consumed Xiao Shan's true vitality and blood qi. Even if he won in the end, it would affect his foundation and even hinder his future cultivation. Dead? Elder, senior martial brother Qiao won't be defeated, right? Boom! Just as everyone was in shock, Ling Zhao's fist finally landed on George's chest. Instantly, the bluestone plaza beneath their feet collapsed and crumbled. The space behind him transformed into a black hole that seemed to be connected to another era. It was a terrifying sight. At this moment, the two figures stood quietly on the spot with grave expressions. As for Ling Zhao's arm, which was hidden under the black robe, a demonic intent flashed and disappeared. Layers of reverse scales snaked out like the hand of a demon god, exuding a shocking pressure. The entire immortal form sect was dead silent. Especially the square and space that was riddled with holes, it allowed everyone to clearly sense the shocking danger contained within this short period of time. Although Ling Xiao had only used one sword and 2 punches, the 3 attacks had the power to kill a saint. Even the immortal form sect master felt a chill run down his spine. The evildoers from the upper realm were terrifying. Crack. Until, suddenly, a strange shattering sound came from the square. Everyone's eyes narrowed. Immediately after, the blood crystal on Qiao Shan's body began to crack at a speed visible to the naked eye. The life force of the current imperial Jew of the heavenly imperial manor was also extinguished. Even at the moment of death, his eyes were still filled with a wisp of dense shock and disbelief. He couldn't figure out how a supreme sword immortal who dominated the sky with his sword could have such terrifying physical strength. Of course, when compared to the Holy Sun from the blood demon abyss, Qiao Shan's defense was already terrifying. At the very least, when Ling Xiao used the might of the devil will, he wasn't directly smashed into nothingness like Li Chun. Senior Qiao. The faces of the 5 heavenly imperial palace members and the immortal form sect disciples turned pale when they saw the blood crystal shatter. After today's battle, they finally understood what it meant to be undefeatable. A monstrous genius of the saint's stage had been killed by a single punch from the young master. What kind of battle prowess was this? Even if one were to look at the thousands of sects in the land of the 9 prefectures, it was likely that no one would be able to compare to the old ancestors who had been famous for a long time. Of course, the people from the heavenly imperial palace were even more shocked. The current generation's Yu Ju was known as Qing Tsang's defense ceiling. At the very least, other than those 10 echelons, it was very difficult for anyone in Qing Tsang to break through Qiao Shan's defense so easily. But today, they watched with their own eyes as senior brother Qiao was smashed into pieces with a single punch. Gulp. Shock and fear had completely suppressed his anger. In other words, they did not have the courage to be angry in front of such a domineering young master of the ancient clan. At the end of the day, it was a fair fight between the two of them. On the other hand, Ling Xiao had killed Qiao Shan with his own strength. There was no trace of fault in his actions. On the other hand, Qiao Shan had forcefully stepped forward and provoked such a powerful enemy for the heavenly imperial palace. He was simply courting death. At this moment, Lin Yan's mouth was agape and his eyes were glazed over. He had actually fainted from the shock. At this moment, he finally understood what kind of person he had provoked. Beat. Congratulations to the host for killing the person with providence. You have gained 7,000 luck points and 70,000 villain points. Beat. Congratulations to the host for killing the person with providence. You have received the reward, Divine Crystal Bloodline. Hearing the system notification, Ling Zhao's expression did not change at all. It seemed like he had won this battle easily, but he felt a little pressured. A person of the current era with 7,000 providence was actually able to withstand his sword force and physical strength. It was obvious that the path to becoming undefeatable was far more dangerous than what the world had imagined. Young master is amazing. Just as Ling Xiao looked over, the elder of the heavenly imperial palace felt a chill in his heart. He actually bowed to Ling Xiao in front of all the disciples' astonished gazes. Lin Yen colluded with the sinners and should be punished. Qiao Shan wanted to cover for him. This is truly heartbreaking. This elder, if you are not satisfied with this matter, I will personally pay a visit to the Lord of the Heavenly Imperial Palace when we return to Qingtsang. We will then go to the Lord of the Heavenly Imperial Palace to discuss this matter. Ling Zhao's expression was indifferent. There was no change in his expression. If this matter had come out of the mouth of a disciple from a small sect, the Heavenly Imperial Palace would have sent people to destroy this sect. Even if the two of them went to the Lord of the Heavenly Imperial Palace, the snow-tide rock would probably do the Heavenly Imperial Palace a favor and destroy this small sect. However, if this matter had come out of Ling Zhao's mouth, the Heavenly Imperial Palace would be the unlucky one. Think about it carefully. Haha, young master, you are being too serious. Qiao Shan met the wrong person and acted on his own accord. This matter has nothing to do with the Heavenly Imperial Palace. The elder shook his head and smiled. Suddenly, he sensed something and turned to look into the distance. At the same time, Ling Zhao's gaze was also fixed on the sky. Numerous figures with wings on their backs silently appeared in that 500 kilometers area. They were like a blood cloud that practically enveloped the entire sky. The corners of Ling Zhao's mouth curled up into a smile. Blood Feather Tribe. The sect master of the Immortal Form sect exclaimed. He was instinctively afraid. However, when he thought of the power that young master had displayed just now, he carefully covered up this fear. They really came uninvited. Ling Xiao shook his head and smiled. He turned to the elder of the Heavenly Imperial Palace and said, "Since elder said that the Heavenly Imperial Palace has nothing to do with the sinners, you will have to prove it later." The elder of the Heavenly Imperial Palace was stunned and his eyes narrowed. Ling People's young master intended to use him as a weapon. However, he did not dare to disobey at all. He was afraid that Ling Xiao would return to the Azure Continent and cause a ruckus in the Realm Lord's Hall. If so, the Heavenly Imperial Palace would suffer great losses. "Young master, don't worry. The sinners deserve to be killed. If they dare to come, they will not be able to return. Elder, you are so loyal. I have yet to ask for your name." Ling Xiao rubbed his hands together and nodded slowly. He looked at the Heavenly Imperial Palace's saint in front of him with admiration. It was as if he was the one who was at the 8th level of the true saint stage. He was very pleased with the words and actions of a junior. "Haha, this old man is Chen Daonian. Greetings, Master Ling Xiao." Elder Chen, please." Ling Xiao turned around and walked to the front of the hall and sat down on a large chair. Beside him, the disciples of the Immortal Form sect served tea and fruits carefully. The sect master of the Blood Feather Tribe and the others finally descended from the sky and landed on the square. "Sect master of the Immortal Form sect, come out and answer me." Chapter 1460. How dare you? How dare a mere sinner yell in front of the young master? Chen Daonian's face darkened. He stepped forward and stood in front of the group of experts from the Blood Feather Tribe. At this moment, there were 5 saints standing behind the Lord of the Blood Feather Tribe. However, they were only at the 3rd or 4th level of the Saint Realm. They were far from Chen Daonian's level. Unfortunately, the Lord of the Blood Feather Tribe had brought all the elites of the tribe with him. His original intention was to destroy the Immortal Transformation sect and avenge Yu Xuani. However, for some reason, the Lord of the Blood Feather Tribe felt an inexplicable sense of fear when he looked at the ordinary-looking old man in front of him. In fact, he naturally saw the black-robed young man sitting in front of the main hall, leisurely drinking tea. The Lord of the Blood Feather Tribe felt a chill from the bottom of his heart. They were from the upper world. It was obvious that those who dared to call the Blood Feather Tribe sinners were from the upper world. However, a mere old man and a young man dared to be so arrogant in the land of the 9 states. Were they not taking the blood feather tribe seriously? Humph. I don't care who you are. We are here today for one thing. Did our young master, Yu Xuanyi, die in the immortal transformation sect? An old man beside the lord of the blood feather tribe suddenly whispered in his ear. Lord, that young man is the young master's lover, Lin Yen. What? The lord of the blood feather tribe was shocked. He sent out a wisp of soul consciousness to wake Lin Yen up. Lin Yen, tell me, who killed Xuanyi? Xuanyi? Lin Yen looked at the crowd with misty eyes. In the next moment, his face froze. Xuanyi is dead? You don't know? The lord of the blood feather tribe was taken aback. His face darkened. Trash. I'll say it again. I don't care who you are. Hand over the person who killed my son. Otherwise today, Elder Chen, what are you waiting for? Ling Xiao put down his teacup and said indifferently. However, a hint of surprise appeared on Qin Daonian's face. He first looked at the hundreds of Blood Feather clan members in front of him, then turned to look at the Immortal Form sect master and the many disciples standing behind Ling Xiao. Finally, he swallowed his saliva. Young master, you mean, does your heavenly imperial palace still want to prove your innocence? Once I give the order, these evil cultivators will immediately be annihilated. Do you still have the chance to prove it? Ling Xiao turned around and gave the Immortal Form sect master a look. The latter immediately understood and waved his hand. The sect guarding Grand Formation instantly covered the sky and blocked off all the escape routes of the Blood Feather race expert. Yes, yes. Thank you, young master, for giving me this opportunity. Young master is so righteous. Chern Daonian's face was livid, but he did not dare to refute. He could only brace himself and face the hundreds of Blood Feather tribe experts alone. In the eyes of the crowd, this scene was somewhat tragic and stirring. The expression of the Lord of the Blood Feather tribe had already turned completely gloomy when the Grand Formation rose. Immortal Form Sect Master, do you really want to become enemies with the Blood Feather tribe? Ha! Push! The Immortal Form Sect Master's face was full of arrogance. After witnessing Ling Zhao's strength, this Saint Stage expert no longer had any misgivings. Good, good. Since that is the case, elders. The Lord of the Blood Feather tribe's eyes flickered with scarlet light. He suddenly waved his hand, and the people behind him immediately rushed forward to meet Qin Daonian. A great battle was about to break out. Terrifying spiritual power spread out and dyed the sky red. Ling Xiao leisurely sipped his tea and ate his spirit fruit, occasionally looking up at the square. At this moment, divine light surged around Qin Daonian's body. The moment he struck out with his palm, it instantly turned into a 100-meter-long divine seal that forced the people in front of him to retreat. Even some of the weaker disciples of the Blood Feather clan were smashed into a bloody mist by this palm. 8th grade Saint Stage. Sensing the terrifying fluctuations contained in the palm, both the Lord of the Blood Feather tribe and the elders of the Blood Feather tribe had a look of fear in their eyes. This strength was comparable to the strongest ancestor in their tribe. Given their strength, it was impossible for them to contend with such a powerful opponent. Great Elder, join forces with the second Elder to stop him. I will think of a way to break the formation. The Lord of the Blood Feather tribe's eyes were cold. He had already sensed the danger. An 8th grade Saint Stage expert had the strength to slaughter them. Once the Immortal Form sect experts attacked, they would not be able to escape today. As long as they could return to their tribe, not only would they be protected by the ancestor, but the experts of the Demon King Palace and the lords from the upper world would also arrive soon. By then, it would not be too late to take revenge. Alright. Yu Huaji gritted his teeth. Although he was unwilling, this was not the time for internal strife. He could only brace himself and stand in front of Qin Daonian. Boom! Boom! The two Blood Feather tribe experts flashed with bloody light as they stepped into the void and struck out with their palms. Instantly, the void shattered, and the sun and moon fell together. At the end of the sky, there seemed to be a sea of blood floating, suppressing all living things. However, in the face of such a terrifying attack, Chun Daonian did not panic at all. The moment he stretched out his palm, a huge golden bell rose into the sky. Its power shook the heavens as it smashed toward the sea of blood. Rumble! The great Tao of the void shattered. The moment the golden bell entered the sea of blood, it suppressed the boundless blood. Even Yu Huaji and Yu Huaji's figures were smashed into nothingness by the divine light. Oh no! Seeing this, the Lord of the Blood Feather Tribe's eyes flickered. A trace of despair finally appeared in his heart. With his strength, it would be difficult for him to break the immortal form sex protective formation in a short time. Could it be that he was really going to die here today? No. I refuse to accept this. Elders, use the Blood Feather Divine Seal. The Lord of the Blood Feather Tribe roared at the sky. He turned to look at the ancient golden bell, and took a deep breath. Hearing this, the remaining 3 Saint Stage Elders and countless Exalt Stage and God Emperor level Blood Feather Clansmen were filled with terror and unwillingness. However, the Great Elder had been smashed into pieces by the bell. If they hesitated, they would still die. Hum! A buzzing sound resounded through the heavens. The Lord of the Blood Feather Tribe's expression was extremely gloomy. He suddenly reached out, grabbed the 2 blood feathers behind him, and pulled hard. Rip! Blood mist scattered. The Lord of the Blood Feather Tribe held the feathers with both hands. His expression was solemn as he chanted, as if he was performing an ancient ceremony. Behind him, hundreds of Blood Feather Tribe members pulled out their blood feathers at the same time and joined their hands together. It was an extremely solemn scene. The falling rain directly dyed the entire square blood red. It was a ghastly sight. Vaguely, an extremely ancient and terrifying power seemed to be gradually awakening from the blood. You actually self-harmed. As expected of the evil race. Such means deserve to be executed. In front of the main hall, Ling Xiao shook his head with a look of pity and righteousness. Chapter 1461. Sacrificial God Seal. The Lord of the Blood Feather Clan raised his head to look at the sky. His eyes were filled with blood-red runes, but they revealed a devout and sacred intent. Above his head, a boundless blood-red radiance rose and transformed into the shape of an ancient seal. This ancient seal was 1,000 feet in size and had many runes and totems engraved on it. From afar, it looked like it was made of blood and thousands of feathers. A wave of energy comparable to a top-tier saint artifact flowed and crashed down. In a short while, the golden radiance that filled the sky was replaced by blood-red radiance. The entire sky was dark and oppressive. Of course, after using this attack, the auras of the countless Blood Feather Clan members were extremely weak. It was obvious that they had used up all of their spiritual energy. Only the Lord of the Blood Feather Clan had a cold expression. He raised his hand and stood in the sky like a divine king, wanting to destroy everything. Young master, this wave of energy is so terrifying. I'm afraid that old uncle can't withstand it. Beside Ling Xiao, Xianyuan Weiyang covered her red lips with her jade-like hand. Her pretty face was pale. The Xianyuan clan cultivated the power of the divine blood. Therefore, they were extremely sensitive to the power of blood in this world. Even with Xianyuan Weiyang's strength, she felt a trace of pressure from the blood-red seal. It was obvious that this attack contained an extremely terrifying power. Should we help him? Otherwise, later. Hearing this, Ling Xiao smiled gently and stretched out his hand to flick Weiyang's little head. Little fool, if you help him now, aren't you looking down on Elder Chen? Xianyuan Weiyang frowned slightly and tilted her head. She seemed to have understood something. Oh right. Then we'll wait for him to be killed and then we'll avenge him. Pfft. Even with Yi Qingchan's personality, she could not help but laugh when she heard Xianyuan Weiyang's words. This silly girl was so naive and cute. Boom! Finally, as the lord of the Blood Feather clan waved his hand, the 100-foot-long blood-red seal suddenly fell from the sky. Countless blood runes filled the sky and gradually gathered above the blood seal. Vaguely, a heart-palpitating evil fluctuation spread out, enveloping the entire immortal form sect. It was clear that the clan lord of the Blood Feather tribe not only wanted to kill Chindaonian, but he also wanted to raze the entire immortal form sect to the ground. The reason why Ling Xiao had deliberately instigated Chindaonian to fight with the Blood Feather race was to test the strength of the Blood Feather race. It must be noted that it was different from the thousands of clans and sects in the world of souls. The three great sinful clans were all supreme orthodoxies that originated from the upper realm. Even though they had been suppressed for 100,000 years, their strength was not something a sect like the Immortal Form sect could compare to. At the very least, even with the strength of the Realm Lord back then, he wasn't able to completely wipe out the three races. From this, one could see how terrifying they were. Of course, no matter how terrifying it wouldn't be a threat to Ling Xiao as long as his cultivation hadn't broken through the Saint Realm. There was no need for him to waste his energy on a bunch of evil fiends without any luck. Rumble! The blood seal smashed down from the sky. After gathering the spiritual energy and blood chi of countless Blood Feather tribe experts, it expanded to a size of 10,000 feet. It was as if a part of the world was crashing down. The ancient mountains, divine forests, immortal palaces, and profound lights were all destroyed. Every wisp of blood radiance that fell from the seal seemed to be filled with a domineering aura that could destroy the world. In comparison, Chindaonian's figure was simply too small. At this moment, the heavenly Imperial Manor Elder's eyes were solemn. The spiritual light around his body continued to pour into the golden bell. In the blink of an eye, the divine bell expanded with the wind. It emitted a blinding golden light as it tried to fight against the blood seal. Boom! The moment the two collided, the entire blue sky was smashed to pieces. As for the ancient formation that originally enveloped the mountain peak, it shattered and disappeared without a trace. Crack! Accompanied by a loud noise, Chindaonian's expression changed drastically. He no longer concealed his holy will. The moment he took a step forward, his aura rose steadily. Until his figure appeared under the golden bell. He clasped his hands together and pushed it fiercely toward the blood seal. In the next moment, Chindaonian's hand seals changed. The golden bell let out a sharp buzzing sound. The golden light suddenly shone brightly, and it exploded in the air. At this critical moment, Chindaonian chose to self-destruct his natal saint artifact. Whoosh! The golden light within a 1,000-mile radius was like the waves of the sea, rising and falling. The wisps were filled with a boundless holy will that made one's scalp tingle. The blood seal that was originally descending finally came to a stop due to this fluctuation. Then, under everyone's dumbfounded gazes, countless cracks appeared on it. Pfft! The faces of the lord of the Blood Feather tribe and Chindaonian turned pale at the same time. They spat out a mouthful of blood. Their auras were extremely weak. Let's go. However, just as the lord of the Blood Feather tribe turned around and was about to escape the Immortal Form sect, he suddenly saw strange ice crystals fill the air. It's snowing. Everyone's eyes narrowed. Some of the Blood Feather tribe disciples could not help but stretch out their hands to catch the ice crystals. However, in the next moment, they were horrified to discover that their arms and bodies had suddenly lost all feeling at the place where the ice crystals fell. Then they were completely frozen. At the same time, an extremely terrifying wave of heat descended from the sky, dyeing the entire void red. Buzz! The sound of a sword suddenly rang out. Before anyone could react, they saw sword shadows piercing through space and slashing toward them. Elder Chen, I'm here to help you. A loud shout suddenly came from the front of the hall. Ling Xiao and the others stepped forward and harvested the countless disciples of the Blood Feather clan with weak auras. Chun Daoyan felt his body tremble when he heard that. Blood flowed from the corner of his mouth again. It was obvious that his injuries were quite serious. The Lord of the Blood Feather tribe gritted his teeth and ignored his fellow tribesmen. He turned around and fled into the distance. Do you think you can escape? Evil demons should die. Today, I, Ling Xiao, represent justice and destroy all of you. Ling Xiao smiled faintly. A black lotus appeared in his eyes. A purplish-black lotus shadow suddenly appeared around the Lord of the Blood Feather tribe. A terrifying wave of heat that made one's scalp tingle immediately enveloped the sky. It was far more despairing than the curtain of fire above them. If it were in the past, the Lord of the Blood Feather tribe would be able to withstand it. However, he had broken his own wings and exhausted all his spiritual energy. Not only did he fail to destroy the Immortal Form sect, but he was also severely injured. As a result, the instant the lotus image fell, raging flames suddenly ignited on his body. The dark and deep color was like a dead lotus blooming on the other side of the river Styx. In an instant, his physical body and divine soul were incinerated. Gulp. Seeing this, the anger on Chun Daoyan's face finally subsided. Instead, it was replaced by a look of sincere reverence. It was obvious that the strength of the young master of the Ling people had surpassed the limits of the current generation. In his current state, if he angered the young master, he might very well be buried here with him. Chapter 1462. Young Master is mighty. It's all thanks to Young Master that we got rid of all the demons. The Immortal Form sect was in an uproar. All the disciples of the Immortal Form sect cheered in unison. However, none of them looked at Chun Daoyan, who was covered in blood. Haha, as cultivators, it is our duty to exterminate demons. Ling Xiao nodded and smiled. His expression was extremely humble. Seeing this, Chun Daoyan immediately laughed perfunctorily. Just as he was about to bid farewell and leave, he heard Ling Xiao say, "Elder Chun, now that the Blood Feather clan has suffered such heavy losses, why don't we take this opportunity to kill our way into Ning Prefecture and completely wipe out this sinful clan?" This, Chun Daoyan smiled bitterly and did not answer. His injuries were quite serious, and it would be difficult for him to recover in a short period of time. If he were to encounter a strong enemy again, it would be no different from courting death. Moreover, even if he did his best to kill the demons, all the credit would go to Ling Xiao. Although Chun Daoyan did not have to compete with a junior for fame and fortune, he was still an inexperienced person. However, the feeling of being used as a tool was extremely sullen. "Oh? Elder Chen's expression seems to be troubled?" Ling Xiao raised his eyebrows in surprise. Could it be that Elder Chen is sympathetic to the Blood Feather tribe? Let's go. Let's go now. I think Young Master is right. We should take this opportunity to exterminate this evil tribe. Elder Chun took a deep breath and took out 7 or 8 pills from his Qiankuan bag. He stuffed all of them into his mouth. Haha, I knew it. With Elder Chen's resolve, how could you make such a mistake? Ling Xiao nodded and turned to look at Lin Yan, who was still bound to the stone pillar. Suddenly, he slammed his palm down and smashed the unconscious Son of Destiny into a pile of minced meat. Beat. Congratulations to host for successfully killing the Son of Providence. You have received 7,000 luck points and 70,000 villain points. Beep. Congratulations to the host for successfully killing the Son of Destiny and obtaining the Flame Spirit Battle Constitution. After doing this, Ling Xiao waved his hand to summon the Golden Dragon Jade carriage, sat cross-legged on it, and walked towards Ning Province with Yi Qinchan and the other 2 women. Behind him, the Immortal Form sect master waved his hand and bellowed, "All elders and disciples above the God-Emperor level, follow the young master to battle. Destroy the evil race. Destroy the evil race." Elder Chun, we, the remaining 4 disciples of the heavenly imperial mansion, looked at each other, not knowing what to do. Although senior brother Qiao Shan had indeed died at the hands of Ling Xiao. However, the appearance of the Lord of the Blood Feather tribe seemed to confirm the fact that Ling Yan had colluded with the Blood Feather tribe. And as an undying inheritance, the heavenly imperial palace was nominally a vassal of the World Lord Palace. Once this matter was spread out, it would definitely bring about endless trouble. In that case, senior martial brother Qiao really deserved to die. Follow me. Chen Daoyan sighed softly. No matter how unwilling he was, he could not find any fault with Ling Xiao. From the beginning to the end, the young master of the Ling people had played the role of the light of righteousness who hated the evil race. Rumble! The golden dragon jade carriage rolled across the sky. Behind the golden dragon jade carriage, there were many people, and their spiritual power was at its peak, which instantly attracted many people's attention. In particular, the golden dragon that was pulling the golden dragon jade carriage exuded a wisp of sage realm aura, which shocked many of the experts of the 9 states. If a sage dragon jade carriage was used as a carriage, then who was the young man in the carriage? System: add a point to the 3,000 sword bones. Add a point to the forging of the heavenly will. Buzz. While everyone was rushing to Ning Province, Ling Xiao used all the villain points he had plundered recently to cultivate the sword bones and forge the heavenly will. Instantly, a piercingly cold sword essence spread out and dissipated in the blink of an eye. Even so, Yi Qingchan and the others were shocked to the point where they broke out in cold sweat. Second stage Sage Realm. 82 Sacred Inscriptions. With the 3,000 sword bones, 1,200 sword bones had been formed. With the help of the perfected sword principles and the 1,000 weapons Taoist scripture, there was only one sword immortal in the Azure world. His heavenly will had also increased to 69%. Soon, he would become a true heavenly will body. At the same time, in the Azure world, in the main hall of the Shi family, a young man in a blue robe stood with his hands behind his back. His eyes were extremely calm. Haha, Shi, hurry up and greet young Master Gu Shan. Beside him, a white-haired old man had a respectful expression as he gave Shi a look. Shi, the young master of the Shi family, greets young Master Gu Shan. Polychoria was originally the path to invincibility. Unfortunately, in this life, luck is not on your side. The young man in blue smiled, and there was an inexplicable deep meaning on his handsome face. Although his appearance was not as outstanding as Ling Xiao's, he also had a sense of immortality. Especially his eyes, there was a sense of vicissitudes and were extremely deep. On his shoulder, a snow-white raccoon lay quietly. When it occasionally opened its eyes, there was actually a touch of coldness. How do you know the teachings of the Shi family? Shi Yi's expression changed. He suddenly stood up, obviously a little shocked. Your ancestors once fought against immortals in the 9 heavens. They are the backbone of the human race. Forget it. I can't cure your eye disease, but I can point you to a place. Perhaps there will be the answer you want. The young man in blue sighed softly. He suddenly pointed his finger. A ray of light flashed and disappeared into Shi Yi's sea of soul. Now that the lower realm has opened, you better make a decision early. Otherwise, if you miss this opportunity, this fortune may not belong to you. Then, the young man in blue turned and was about to leave. Oh right. You can only step into the first seal of that place. You cannot enter the second seal. Otherwise, the Shi family will be in big trouble. Master, why are you helping me? Shi frowned. Inside his sea of soul, a lot of information had appeared. However, the secrets hidden within were beyond Shi Yi's expectations. More than that, if this shocking secret is leaked out, it will cause a real disturbance in the azure sky. Why? The young man in blue stopped in his tracks. He suddenly shook his head and smiled. Without another word, he walked out of the Sure family along the mountain path. Dr. Hua, I am not sure about this master's temperament. However, since he has pointed out the way for you, everything will be decided by you. The white-haired elder's expression was bitter. His eyes were also filled with confusion. In the past, this descendant of the Forbidden Grounds would more or less make some requests when he diagnoses someone. But today he broke this rule. It was truly puzzling. Yes. In the end, sure he didn't say anything else, but a wisp of seriousness appeared in his eyes. To go or not to go? If what the young master said was true and there was a god buried there, then when he broke the seal, would it cause a real disturbance in the azure sky? But, if he doesn't go, he will become a handicapped person. He will not be able to lead the Sure family back to its former glory. He will not be able to handle this chaotic world. However, what made Sure even more confused was, how did this young man, who looked less than 1,000 years old, know about his ancestors' whereabouts and the Sure family's ancient saying? Who was he? Chapter 1463. Outside the Sure clan, in a dense ancient forest, the young man in blue stood with his hands behind his back, looking at the distant sky. At this moment, there was also a confused expression on his face. My lord, why did you help Sure recover from his eye disease? The next moment, he suddenly turned his head and looked at the civet cat on his shoulder. His tone was extremely respectful. It was as if he was just the civet cat's servant. Back then, the stone ancestor went against the heavens and slayed the immortals. He broke the forbidden ancient and resisted the otherworldly calamity. Now, consider it as leaving an opportunity for the human race. The civet cat suddenly opened its mouth and spoke in human language. Even its pair of red vertical pupils flashed with a deep color. Opportunity! Since ancient times the world has changed. Immortals, demons, humans, and demons have all experienced reincarnation and become the main characters of this world. However, with the change of fate, which race can truly stand above the heavens? Haven't we been fooled and schemed against time and time again? The civet cat shook its head and smiled. Its tone was extremely vicissitudes of life. It was as if it had experienced the ancient times and seen through the heavenly Tao. It was born with the epoch, and was independent of the 6 paths. My lord, do you mean in this chaotic world, the unforeseen event from 190,000 years ago will happen again? This time, I can't see through it. It's as if everything is under control, but it's also outside of control. Forget it. My lonely mountain is only here to continue the inheritance, to record the rise and fall of the world, to enter the mortal world, to break the mortal world, and to walk beyond the world. With that, the civet cat closed its eyes again. It curled up on the young man in blue's shoulder and fell into a deep sleep. This, the young man in blue seemed to understand, but he was also extremely confused. In the end, he didn't ask any more questions. He lifted his foot and walked toward the distant mountain. The final destination of all living things in this world was ultimately a handful of yellow soil. No matter how glorious it was, it couldn't escape fate. The end of the path of immortality was never immortality. It was just a change between prosperous times and chaotic times. Sometimes, the prosperity you see is too one-sided. Promise me, the moment you see the light, you must remember to look at the surrounding darkness before you decide whether to embrace it or not. A day passed in the blink of an eye. Ning Province, Central Divine Mountain. The Blood Feather clan members gathered in the main hall. They all looked extremely gloomy and terrified. Today, the soul tablets of the Blood Feather clan master, the 5 elders, and hundreds of clansmen were all shattered. Such grievous news almost instantly crushed the Tao hearts of all the Blood Feather race members. Ancestor, what should we do? Yes. Old ancestor, let's run. The clan lord must have provoked an extraordinary existence. Once they kill their way up to the sacred mountain, I'm afraid even you, old ancestor, will not be able to escape death." Everyone cried out and looked at the blood-robed old man in the hall with complicated expressions. Hearing this, a wisp of killing intent immediately appeared on the old man's gaunt and terrifying face. As the ancestor of the Blood Feather tribe, Yu Zhonglong's cultivation had long reached the 8th level of the Saint Realm. Even in the entire 9 continents, there were only a few people who could fight against him. However, the Blood Feather race's ancestor's heart was cold, and he felt extremely uneasy. The leader of the Blood Feather tribe and 5 elders had died. The Blood Feather tribe had lost 6 saints. Such a loss could be said to have caused the Blood Feather race to fall off their pedestal. However, where could the Blood Feather race escape to, given the size of the 9 prefectures? "Side, gather the people and follow me to the Dead Soul Reef." In the end, Yu Zhonglong pondered for a moment and sighed softly. "What? The Dead Soul Reef?" Hearing this, the Blood Feather race who had been clamoring suddenly fell silent. This place was the most famous forbidden area in the 9 prefectures. It was rumored that this place was originally a place where an evil demon cultivated. It was filled with cursed dead souls. Any living thing that entered would be devoured by thousands of souls and die an unnatural death. Even the Green Ghost tribe did not dare to go near it. Back then, when the sacred emperor unified the 9 prefectures, he had used his monstrous divine power to seal this place. It had been thousands of years since then. As one of the 3 major god tribes, the Blood Feather race had occupied the 9 prefectures for many years and offended many clans. Once today's matter spread out, they would probably be quickly destroyed by the combined forces of others. Only a forbidden area like the Dead Soul Reef could be considered a safe place for the Blood Feather race. Ha ha ha, Ancestor Zhonglang, did something happen to the Blood Feather race? Why is the atmosphere so oppressive? However, just as the Blood Feather race members fell silent, a hearty laugh suddenly came from outside the main hall. Yu Zhonglong narrowed his eyes and released his 8th-grade Saint Aura. He was like a bird startled by the twang of a bow. Ancestor Zhonglang, is this how the Blood Feather race treats their guests?" At the same time, another gentle and ethereal voice came from outside, which made Yu Zhonglong relax a little. 2 figures walked in slowly. One of them was a young man in a golden robe with an unruly expression. He had eagle-like eyes and thick eyebrows, and his eyes were fierce. The other was a young girl in a fur coat. She had a tranquil smile on her delicate face. Her eyes were pure gold, and her pupils were vertical. Her skin was snow-white, and her legs and lower abdomen were exposed. It was really extremely seductive. Demon King Palace. Sensing the surging demonic aura from the 2 of them, Yu Zhonglong frowned slightly, but a look of realization appeared on his face. Just a few days ago, Demon King Palace had suddenly sent news that a lord from the upper world had come and wanted to join forces with the Blood Feather race. Originally, the lord of the Blood Feather race was still hesitating. Why did Demon King Palace choose the Blood Feather race instead of the Black Demons and Blue Ghost? However, at this moment, Yu Zhonglong suddenly had a slight hesitation in his heart. If he could take this opportunity to join forces with Demon King Palace and obtain the protection of that lord from the upper world, the crisis of the Blood Feather race might be easily resolved. After all, Demon King Palace's status in the 9 states was no less than the 3 deity races. And to be able to make this force bow down, it must be an extremely terrifying existence from the upper world. Ancestor, are you planning to refuse to join forces with Demon King Palace? The young girl in fur coat glanced around the main hall, but she did not see the lord of the Blood Feather race. She was surprised. Today, Demon King Palace had come for the lord of the Blood Feather race. But it seemed that he was not in the race. No, you 2 misunderstand. How can we refuse such good intentions? Yu Zhonglong shook his head and smiled. Now that the 9 states is in chaos, if we join forces, we can wipe out all enemies in the world. No matter how bad it is, we will not be casually destroyed by others. With your words, we can rest assured. Our saint and that lord are already on their way. Ancestor, please prepare to welcome them with me." The young girl in fur coat and the golden-robed young man looked at each other, and an inexplicable smile flickered in their eyes. Of course, if they knew that the lord of the blood feather race was dead, they would probably turn around and leave immediately. "Haha, may I ask the two of you, where exactly did that lord from the upper world come from? Where did he come from? I can only tell you that even in the upper world, that lord's identity can be said to be unique." The two of them smiled brightly, and there was undisguised arrogance on their faces. Chapter 1464. The Only One in the World? Yu Zhonglang's eyelids twitched, but he was deep in thought. Obviously, he wanted to borrow the power of the Demon King Palace and the Lord from the upper world to help the Blood Feather tribe survive this calamity. However, once this intention was discovered, it would definitely incur the wrath of that lord. In this situation, the Blood Feather tribe had a slim chance of survival. "May I ask why the lord wants to join forces with the Blood Feather tribe?" "Haha, this is not something we can speculate about. Patriarch, please be patient. The lord and the saintess will be here soon." The girl in fur shook her head and smiled, pretending to be profound. In the past, she would not have dared to speak to the patriarch of the Blood Feather tribe like this. However, this was not the past. With the Lord's protection, the Demon King Palace could do whatever they wanted in the 9 states. The Lord could easily kill the deity race and the sinful race with a flick of his finger. "All right." Yu Zhonglang nodded. His mind was full of thoughts, but in the end, he could not think of a solution. He could only take one step at a time. At the same time, at the border of the Ning state, several demonic shadows whizzed across the sky, covering the clouds and the sun. The leader was a green-winged eagle. Its demonic power filled the sky and intimidated the heavens. However, it had the head of a dog. Obviously, this big demon's cultivation had already reached the saint realm. It was impossible for it to be unknown in the 9 state. However, it could only be used as a mount. It was obvious that the powerful cultivator on its back was of a high status. "Young master, we should reach the Blood Feather tribe in half a day." 2 figures stood on the back of the green-winged eagle and looked into the distance. One of them was the young man in blue that Ling Xiao had seen in the ancient forest when he came to the lower world. Beside him stood a young girl wearing the robe of the water jade Rosa. The young girl's face was fair and slightly immature, but she already had a beauty that could topple the world. Her eyes were a strange green color, like a fairy in the mountains, ethereal and dreamy. There were 2 transparent wings on her back. They were beautiful and made people want to take pity on her. Behind the 2 of them, there were several figures with strong auras. However, there were no experts protecting them, which was strange. It was reasonable to say that the young master's successors from the lower realm would bring a powerhouse at the peak of the saint stage with them to avoid disaster. However, this group of noble youths had actually descended to the lower realm by themselves. From this, it could be seen that they were extremely confident in their own strength. "Yes, are you sure that the Lord of the Blood Feather race has a bronze fragment?" The blue-clothed young man's expression was calm, without the slightest ripple. This time, he had come down to the lower realm for the ultimate creation. Coincidentally, on the day he arrived at the Demon King's palace, he received a bronze fragment from the palace. To be more precise, the Holy Maiden of the Demon King Palace had personally presented it to him. Even with the blue-robed young man's experience, he was unable to see through the mysteries contained within the fragment. However, he could vaguely sense that this fragment contained a great opportunity. It was very likely to be related to the ultimate creation of this world. As long as he could find the remaining fragments, he might be able to unravel the real mystery. As for why he did not bring a protector, It was because, in the eyes of the blue-robed young man, the real experience was the sharpening of life and death. What right did those good-for-nothings with slaves have to stand at the top of the world? Don't worry, young master. Sun-Er's sense of aura is extraordinary. Many years ago, I met the Lord of the Blood Feather race once. He had the same aura as the bronze fragment. The holy maiden of the Demon King's palace, Hua Sun, smiled gently. Her posture was extremely respectful. As a member of the demon clan, to be honest, her talent was somewhat unique. It was not her physical combat strength, but an innate sense of aura. This sense allowed her to predict the trajectory and strength of an attack in advance when she fought with others. Thus, she was able to make the most accurate response. Of course, with this talent, it was easier for her to search for the world's spiritual treasures. In fact, some inconspicuous treasures were rare treasures in her eyes. She had never missed anything. However, neither Hua Sun nor the blue-robed young man would have thought that the bronze fragment on the Lord of the Blood Feather race had been taken away by Yushwani and given to Lin Yin a year ago. In other words, this treasure that was related to the secrets of heaven and earth would eventually fall into the hands of the Son of Destiny, no matter what method was used. This trip could not be said to be a fruitless one. It was more like they were digging their own graves. That's good. Don't worry. When I obtain the creation of this world, I will bring you to the Azure world. With your talent, the demon clan will not mistreat you. The blue-robed young man was the young master of the demon clan, the immortal inheritance of the Azure world. Nanmune was known as the rare genius of the demon clan. His cultivation and combat strength were ranked 8th in the Azure world's 100 talent. He was the real top of the generation. Those who could be ranked in the top 10 of the 100 talents were all in the sequence and had unparalleled combat strength. Nanmune's cultivation had already entered the Saint realm. However, due to his old age, his ranking was slightly lower. Thank you, young master. Hua Sun smiled sweetly and her bright eyes trembled. She was naturally reserved and was somewhat different from the ordinary prides of the lower world. She had no doubts about the young master's identity and status. One had to know that even the Demon King's palace was founded by an expert from the demon controlling sect. In other words, Hua Sun and all the experts of the Demon King palace were just the young master's servants. Ascending to the upper world and no longer being bound by the shackles of the heavenly way was more realistic and reliable than any opportunity to become an immortal. If she was lucky enough to become the demon clan's demon clan expert, her future would be limitless. It was very likely that she would become immortal with heaven and earth. Previously, she had already sent 2 of the Demon King Palace's top talents to the Blood Feather tribe to prepare a ceremonial procession and welcome the arrival of the young master. Such a meticulous action would definitely win the young master's favor. Buzz. The green eagle flapped its wings and soared for thousands of miles, attracting countless gazes along the way. At the same time, in the land of the Blood Feather tribe, suddenly, dark clouds appeared in the sky. A terrifying force swept up the wind and clouds, covering the entire Blood Feather sacred mountain. Could it be that Lord has arrived? In the main hall, Yu Zhonglong narrowed his eyes and took the lead to walk out of the hall. 2 of the Demon King Palace's top talents followed closely behind him. The entire Blood Feather tribe was completely shaken at this time. Countless figures walked out of the main hall and looked toward the sky, their eyes filled with fear and awe. Demonic force. What a terrifying demonic force! It was at least at the Saint realm, and it was an indescribably terrifying dragon force. Demon King Palace's expert. However, the moment the figure appeared in the sky, a trace of confusion appeared on the faces of the Blood Feather tribe members. There seemed to be too many people. In the sky, numerous figures appeared and stood respectfully. In front of the crowd, a golden dragon stretched across the void, exuding a vast Saint realm aura. But why did it seem to be dragging a carriage behind it? That posture, it was like an animal. Chapter 1465. Is this the Lord you're talking about? Yu Zhonglong stood in front of the palace, his eyes filled with surprise. As expected of a lord from the upper world, he actually captured a saint stage expert of the Demon King Palace and made him his mount. Moreover, the several figures on the jade chariot were extremely otherworldly. They must have come from the upper world. However, why did the old man behind the chariot look so familiar? No. The young lady in fur shook her head slightly. Although there was a hint of surprise in her eyes, it was obvious that she was stunned. The young man sitting on the dragon chariot simply made people want to have a beast's desire. No, no? Yu Zhonglong's face froze. Suddenly, he thought of something and his eyes widened. Ancestor, what's wrong? Could it be that an enemy has come knocking on our door? The young lady in fur smiled disdainfully and looked at the golden-robed young man. There was no trace of panic on her face. Even they could feel the terror of this group of people, especially the young man in black. He dared to use a sacred dragon as his chariot, which showed his noble status. However, no matter how noble he was, could he be more noble than the young master of the demon-controlling sect? The immortal inheritance was the pinnacle of power. Both of you, to be honest, an enemy has indeed come knocking on our door. Yu Zhonglong nodded solemnly. At this moment, he finally understood why the old man beside the young man looked so familiar. Wasn't that the immortal transformation sect master, Hua something? Haha, don't worry, ancestor. With the two of us here, no one can touch the Blood Feather tribe today. The golden-robed young man sneered, his eagle eyes filled with mockery. Then, he lifted his foot and walked out of the palace. He looked up at the sky and shouted coldly, "Everyone, I am Feng Xiao from the Demon King Palace. Today, no matter what enmity you have with the Blood Feather tribe, I advise you to buzz." Before Feng Xiao could finish his words, the young man in black suddenly stretched out a palm from the sky and pressed down horizontally. Suddenly, a golden palm print condensed in the sky and fell with a loud bang. At this moment, the arrogance on Feng Xiao's face had completely disappeared before it completely disappeared. He could feel that the palm print contained a wisp of Saint Will, which was 10,000 times more terrifying than the Saint Stage Elders of the Demon King Palace. F***ck. Looking at the palm print falling from the sky, Feng Xiao's face changed greatly. Golden light rose around his body, and he turned into a demon shadow that was dozens of feet long. He flew up, trying to avoid the attack. However, right at this moment, he noticed to his surprise that the space before him seemed to have stopped, and no matter how he shouted, he wasn't able to make a single sound. Boom! In the end, the palm smashed down, directly crushing Feng Xiao's figure to the ground, turning him into a pile of flesh and blood. Gulp! When they saw this scene, no matter if it was the young woman in fur clothes or ancestor Blood Feather, their eyes suddenly narrowed. Just like that, Feng Xiao's cultivation was at the 6th grade of the Exalted Realm. Even in the entire 9 prefectures, they were considered top-notch existences. Moreover, the demon clan's physical body was the strongest among their peers. How did it shatter with a single palm strike? Kill. Ling Xiao sat in his dragon carriage and looked down coldly at the people below. There was not a trace of emotion on his face. A mere mongrel stupid eagle actually dared to show off its prowess in front of him. Even the young master of the Divine Feather Clan, Huang Luoi, could only bow his head in front of him and did not dare to show any signs of arrogance. Demon King Palace? What a joke! Wait a minute. When she saw the countless figures rushing down from the sky, the young woman in fur clothes' pretty face froze. She hurriedly walked to the front of the palace and bowed to Ling Xiao. Young master, Ling Xiao raised his eyebrows slightly and raised his hand slightly. The immortal form sect master and the others immediately stopped in midair, and did not dare to act rashly. When they saw this, the Blood Feather clan members became even more terrified. Who exactly was this young man? How could he make a group of venerable realm experts so obedient? Young master, I am Bai Qing, a disciple of the Demon King Palace. I am here on Lord Nan Mu's orders to discuss an alliance with the Blood Feather clan. I hope that young master will show mercy. The young woman in fur clothes' eyes trembled, and the arrogance from before disappeared. At this moment, she only hoped to stall for time until the Saintess and young master Nan Mu arrived. Then, the crisis would naturally be resolved. Lord Nan Mu? Alliance? Ling Xiao nodded slightly. His expression was still gentle and calm. However, in the next moment, he waved his hand again and said in a cold voice, "Kill them all." Boom! Tens of thousands of feet of spiritual light shot into the sky. The immortal form sect master took the lead and charged toward Bai Qing. Chen Daonian hesitated for a moment before taking the initiative to meet the Blood Feather clan ancestor. In an instant, the Blood Feather clan's battle cries shook the sky and cheers rose and fell. It was very lively. Ling Xiao glanced at Xianyuan Weiyang beside him and smiled. "Weiyang, go and try the halberd I gave you." "Ah? All right, young master, I will go now." Xianyuan Weiyang's pretty face froze. She was clearly nervous. Although she had followed Ling Xiao to kill countless evil spirits, this was the first time she had done something like exterminating an entire clan. However, when she remembered that the Blood Feather clan was one of the 3 sinful clans, she quickly suppressed the fear in her heart. Suddenly, a ray of blood light appeared between heaven and earth. Then, Xianyuan Weiyang descended from the sky with the blood halberd in her hand. Her white robes fluttered in the wind, and her black hair danced in the wind. There was an inexplicable sense of valiance. Rumble! In a short moment, spiritual light collided on the Blood Feather sacred mountain and destroyed the sacred mountain. Countless Blood Feather clan members were suppressed and killed. It was like purgatory on earth. Apart from the Blood Feather ancestor and 2 other Saint Realm experts who were barely able to hold on, the entire Blood Feather clan was quickly slaughtered. Roar! Accompanied by a roar, demonic light suddenly bloomed around Bai Qing's body. Her body expanded several times, and she leaped into the air like a ferocious tiger. However, unlike ordinary tigers, Bai Qing's body was covered in snow-white fur. It was crystal clear and beautiful. "She's a white tiger?" Ling Xiao raised his eyebrows and a playful smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. "It's a pity that her bloodline is too low. Otherwise, I could tie her up and make her a pet slave." "Damn bastard! I won't let you go even if I die." At this moment, the Blood Feather clan ancestor, who was repeatedly forced back by Chen Daonian, suddenly roared angrily. A pair of blood wings spread out and he looked up at Ling Xiao with hatred in his eyes. In the next moment, the Blood Feather clan ancestor flapped his wings and suddenly disappeared on the spot. A ripple appeared in the void in front of Ling Xiao. A pair of palms appeared out of thin air and were about to kill Ling Xiao and the other 2 on the spot. But, just as the killing intent in Yu Zhonglang's eyes surged, he suddenly felt an extremely oppressive aura coming from behind him. It was as if a demon that was several times larger than him had quietly appeared behind him and was looking at him with a pair of cold and fierce eyes. Gulp! Inexplicably, Yu Zhonglang suddenly felt extremely fearful. But, before he could turn his head to look, he felt a sudden pain in his back. Then, a palm pierced through his chest and came out of his body. Chapter 1466. Pucci. Yu Zhonglang's lips trembled slightly. He turned his head and saw a 10 feet tall mighty figure standing behind him. It was a man clad in battle armor. His eyes were as calm as an ancient well, and even seemed a little wooden. At this moment, there was no aura emitting from his body. However, it was stifling and suffocating. Roar! Another roar came from the main hall. Bai Qing's figure fell from the sky. Her bones were all broken, but there was still a trace of vitality left. Just now, Ling Xiao ordered the sect master of the Immortal Transformation sect to take action. It was not to kill Bai Qing, but to capture her so that Ling Xiao could find out which lord from the upper world was behind her. Nanmu? That's a pretty cool surname. However, if he was from the upper world, why would he join hands with the Bloodfeather tribe? There must be something fishy going on. Although Ling Xiao did not have to worry about anything in the world of souls like he did in the upper world, it was better to be cautious. Heaven and earth fell silent. Ling Xiao's figure descended from the sky and landed beside Bai Qing. At this moment, the white tiger girl's fur was dyed red. Her body was broken and blood flowed down from the corner of her mouth. When she saw Ling Xiao, her eyes flashed with hatred. She struggled to open her mouth and said, "You will regret this. All of you will die." "I'm curious. Who gave you such confidence?" Ling Xiao smiled. He did not search Bai Qing's soul in front of the people from the heavenly imperial palace. Instead, he lifted his foot and stepped on her face. I'm afraid I'll scare you to death if I tell you. The lord behind my Demon King Palace is the young master of the Immortal Inheritance sect, Nan Muyun. Bai Qing smiled coldly. Her internal organs flowed all over the ground. As she laughed, her expression suddenly froze. At this moment, she seemed to see the young man in front of her laughing even more happily than her. How could it be? The words immortal inheritance were a deterrent to any sect. After knowing who his backer was, not only did this young man not feel a trace of panic, he even smiled happily? It was ridiculous. Tell me, why has Nanmyun come to the Bloodfeather clan? Ling Xiao shook his head. In fact, he had already guessed it. In the entire Qing Tsang continent, other than the extreme south, the most famous force that was related to the Demon Clan was the Demon Clan. Meanwhile, the Demon Clan in the extreme south was already in a state of chaos. Naturally, they had no energy to participate in the human clan's secret realm. The only possibility was the blue-robed young man from the demon-controlling sect. It's impossible for me to betray the young master. Kill me if you can. Bai Qing coldly shouted, only to see the young man lifting his leg and stomping on her head. At the same time, a strange force swept over and devoured all of Bai Qing's memories. Just as the soul of the Demon King's young goddess Gong was about to be extinguished, she seemed to hear the young man suddenly speak softly. "I've already killed several of the demon-controlling sect's current generation geniuses. In a moment, I'll send Lord Nan Mu down to accompany you." Buzz. With a gust of cold wind, not a single person from the Bloodfeather race's holy land was left alive. A smile also appeared on Ling Xiao's face. The bronze fragment. When Ling Yan kindly gave this fragment to him, Ling Xiao could feel the immortal charm contained in it. Just as Nanmyun thought, Ling Xiao also guessed that this fragment was likely related to the land of the sinful immortals. Moreover, as far as Bai Qing knew, the holy maiden of the Demon King's palace, Hua Sun, also had a fragment and had already given it to Nanmyun. In this case, it seemed that the young master of the demon-controlling sect had no choice but to die. Young master, the Bloodfeather race has been eliminated. Do you think we should? Chen Daonian walked up to Ling Xiao and bowed slightly. At this moment, the elder of the heavenly imperial mansion's aura had become increasingly weak. There was even a visible wound on his chest. Apparently, it was also caused by the Bloodfeather race ancestor. Of course, Chen Daonian did not care about these injuries at all. He only hoped that he could get away from Ling Xiao as soon as possible. This way, he might still have a chance to live. Elder Chen, you've worked hard. However, I'm afraid you can't leave for the time being. Ling Xiao shook his head. His expression was extremely solemn. Chen Daonian was stunned when he heard this. Even his body could not help but tremble for a moment. Snatch the bamboo shoots. This young master of the Ling people was obviously going to use him to his death. As you can see, the Demon King's palace is behind the Blood Feather race. Moreover, I seriously suspect that there is a traitor in the Qing Tsang team who is in cahoots with the demons. Therefore, Elder Chen, don't worry. I will personally eliminate the demons later. I only hope that Elder Chen can stay behind to bear witness. Ling Xiao sighed softly. He looked a little lonely. Chen Daoyan's eyes trembled slightly. In the end, he nodded with a smile. It's really a blessing for the Qing Tsang to have you, young master. Boom! Just as the two of them were talking, there was a sudden rush of wind in the distant sky. Then, a pair of green wings covered the sky and soon appeared above everyone's heads. Nanmune and Hua Sun's expressions changed abruptly. There was a hint of surprise in their eyes. Especially Hua Sun. When he saw Feng Xiao and Bai Qing's bodies, he could not help but exclaim, Qing brother Feng Xiao. These two were the true top prodigies of the Demon King's palace. The Demon King's palace had even planned to choose one of them to inherit the position of young master after Hua Sun went to the upper realm. But how did they die in the Blood Feather race? Nanmune. Ling Xiao stood with his hands behind his back. He looked up at the young man above him. Ling Xiao could feel an extremely terrifying wave of saint will from him. Obviously, the young master of the Demon King's sect had more than one saint rune. Moreover, Ling Xiao had already fought with Song He and the others before. He knew that the combat strength of this sect was not based on their realm. They had integrated the Demon King's power in their bodies. Once they used it, their cultivation would definitely soar. First rank Saint Realm, 14,000 points of fate, devouring principle. That was interesting. After being in the lower realm for so long, this was the first opponent that Ling Xiao had encountered who had some fighting spirit. Ling Xiao. Nanmune raised his hand and interrupted Hua Sun. There was a hint of coldness in his eyes. Sensing the tense body of the young master of the Demon King's sect, Hua Sun swallowed the words that were at the tip of his tongue. With his shrewdness, he could easily guess that Ling Xiao's status was not much lower than that of the young master of the Demon King's sect. Otherwise, the young master would not have such a grave expression on his face, and would have directly killed him. Did you kill them all? Nanmune nodded slightly. His gaze swept across the countless corpses in front of the palace. He suddenly turned his head and glanced at Hua Sun. The latter immediately understood and carefully sensed. His eyes fell on Ling Xiao. Seeing this, Nanmune's lips suddenly curled into a smile. He no longer concealed the fighting spirit in his eyes. Chapter 1467. Today, Nanmune and the others came to the Blood Feather tribe not to join forces with the sinful tribe, but only for the bronze fragment in the hands of the Lord of the Blood Feather tribe. Seeing the Blood Feather tribe being slaughtered, to be honest, Nanmune did not feel the slightest bit of emotion. Not to mention the Blood Feather tribe, even if the Demon King Palace was destroyed, he would not feel any heartache. After all, they were just a slave tribe. Oh no. Of course he would feel heartache. He was a destined person. How could he be so cold and heartless? However, judging from Hua Sun's words, the aura of the fragment should be on Ling Xiao. His main purpose in coming to the lower worlds was to find the source of the recovery of spiritual qi in this world and obtain it. After all, according to the patriarch of the sect, such a treasure that could cause such a change in heaven and earth must be related to the fate of heaven and earth. Whether it was Ling Xiao or the young lord of the Realm Lord Palace, to be honest, there was not much respect in the eyes of a destined person. What Nanmune believed in was that strength was respected. Was it not the nature of a villain to blindly be fearful and curry favor with those in power? As a person of the same generation, Nanmune was not afraid of anyone. Brother Nanmune, are you looking for this? Ling Xiao smiled and gently clenched his fist. The bronze shard immediately appeared in his hand. He naturally saw Hua Sun's action just now. That kind of strange divine sense was indeed somewhat miraculous. 8th grade Exalted Realm, 5,000 fate point. It was obvious that this woman's spiritual soul was different from ordinary people. She was a good treasure-seeking mouse that could be used. Haha, Master Ling Xiao, since everyone knows, there's no need to be so polite, right? Nanmuyun nodded and smiled. His blue robe fluttered in the wind, and he indeed looked somewhat otherworldly. That's what I was thinking. Ling Xiao nodded as well. His eyes were clear as he suddenly took a step forward. Boom! An ear-piercing buzzing sound resounded through the world. Outside Ling Xiao's body, rays of light appeared and thousands of daos surged. He was like an immortal god that defied the heavens. Seeing this, Nanmuyun's eyes narrowed slightly. There seemed to be a demon shadow that appeared with a slightly serious expression. Naturally, he did not underestimate Ling Xiao at all. After all, in the past year, the Azure Sky world had been filled with rumors about the young master of the Ling people. Countless geniuses of this generation had been crushed and killed by him. Even the Sky Demon had been severely injured by him and the Snow Tidal Rock. With all these feats, it was impossible for him to be a piece of trash. Ling Xiao, let's have a fair fight today. The loser will hand over the bronze shard. Nanmuyun's voice was piercingly cold, and there seemed to be spiritual power rising around him. When he first entered the Saint stage and underwent the Saint tribulation, he had condensed a total of 5 Saint runes. In other words, the spiritual power in his body was equivalent to that of 5 saints, which was enough to show disdain for his peers. Furthermore, his taming demon was of an ancient bloodline. Its might was terrifying, and it was not something that a person of the current generation could contend against. However, at this time, Ling Xiao did not say a word of nonsense. The moment he stretched out his hand, the 100 swords behind him immediately floated into the air, piercing through the void with the power to cut the sky, and slashed down horizontally. Hand over the bronze shards? Nanmuyun's thinking was too naive. Boom! Boom! The void shattered, and above the 100 sword shadows, there was a wisp of Saint aura. Such power was enough to shock heaven and earth. A solemn look finally appeared on Nanmuyun's face. Then, he stretched out his hands, and a vast spiritual power rose. Above his head, a golden decree appeared in the air, and it turned into 1,000 feet in size, enveloping the heavens. On the decree, there was an outline of mountains and seas, and the depiction of celestial essence. It was lifelike, and it surged with supreme power. Scrolls of mountains and rivers appeared, as if the cycle of eras was constantly changing. Vaguely, among the mountains and seas of stars, there seemed to be countless phantoms of fiend gods standing, looking down at the world with awe-inspiring eyes. It's the mountain and sea god demon painting of the taming demon sect. Chen Daoyan's eyes narrowed slightly, and he was obviously a little surprised. For immortal inheritances, there would be some famous Dharma artifacts and spiritual treasures in the sect. Although the taming demon sect was most famous for its few great demons with terrifying bloodlines, this mountain and sea god demon painting was also extremely domineering. It was said that there were dozens of large and small demon souls sealed in this painting, and its power was unparalleled. They did not expect Nanmuyun to bring this supreme treasure out from the lower realm. Buzz! The divine painting unfolded, and instantly covered the blue sky. Numerous ancient mountains and phantoms of fiend gods immediately stepped out, blocking the torrent of 100 swords. However, the moment the two collided, the glow on the mountain and sea god demon painting suddenly stagnated for a moment. Then, everyone was stunned to see that the countless phantoms of fiend gods were directly pierced through by the 100 swords, and were slashed into nothingness. Nanmuyun frowned slightly, and he was obviously a little surprised. The moment his hand seal changed, golden light sprinkled from the divine painting again, and it transformed into countless strange phenomena. However, No matter how terrifying the strange phenomena were, they were still torn apart by the sword's shadows in the end. Seeing this, Nanmuyun's eyes suddenly turned gloomy. He stretched out his hand, and directly used the mountain and sea god demon painting as a contract, enveloping and trapping the 100 swords in the painting. Interesting. Ling Xiao smiled, and there was no trace of panic on his face. The moment the black vortex appeared in his eyes, his figure suddenly disappeared from the spot. Buzz. A ripple quietly appeared in the void in front of Nanmuyun. A fist shadow pierced through the void and violently smashed toward his chest. Under the fist shadow, the sharpness was shocking, and tens of thousands of fiend gods flourished, tearing a terrifying crack in the entire heaven and earth. This attack came too strangely, and even Nanmuyun had a look of surprise on his face. Before he could defend himself, Ling Zhao's palm had already landed on his physical body. Boom! Nanmuyun's figure was directly sent flying, and he smashed into the sacred palace on the mountain peak, and disappeared without a trace. However, at this moment, Ling Xiao did not have a trace of joy on his face. Instead, he looked a little surprised. The moment his fist shadow landed, he seemed to have felt an extremely strange force enveloping and devouring his spiritual energy and physical strength. Although this kind of devouring did not completely offset the divine power in the fist, it was obvious that, compared to the other children of destiny, Nanmuyun's method was indeed somewhat unique. Su Yen, Wei Yang, go and kill those young men from the demon-controlling sect. Senior Xionghuan, please stop that green condor. In front of the sacred palace, Yi Qingchan looked up at the sky, and her eyes were filled with coldness. Previously, when Ling Xiao looked at the demon palace's saintess, there was a trace of playfulness in his eyes. In other words, this woman should be of some use to the young master. Although she also wanted to kill her, she could barely spare the life of a woman who was useful to the young master. Yes, Sister Qingchan. Su Yen and Xianyuan Weiyang nodded slightly, and their figures suddenly soared into the sky, rushing toward the 4 demon-controlling sects' heaven's prides. Yi Qingchan, on the other hand, stared at Hua Sun with cold eyes, and gradually a snowstorm began to spread around her. Chapter 1468. Boom! Waves of spiritual aura came from the sky. An endless sea of fire filled the sky. Su Yen reached out with her hand like a fire goddess. Even her hair was burning with crimson flames. She blocked the path of a genius from the demon-controlling sect who was at the 7th level of the Exalt realm. Her cultivation level was much lower than that of Xianyuan Weiyang and Yi Qingchan. But with the power of her spiritual fire, she could crush people of the same cultivation level. On the other hand, Xianyuan Weiyang strode over. A sea of blood floated beneath her feet, and every single step she took was like a shocking wave of blood that shook everyone's hearts. She held the halberd in her hand. It was more than an inch longer than her, and it was extremely intimidating. She swung her halberd horizontally, shattering the void. She had stopped the 3 heavens' favorites from the House of Monsters by herself. The originally clear sky was instantly covered by the color of blood. It was as if a shackle had imprisoned the world. But this blood chi was completely different from the blood feather races. It was not evil at all. Instead, it was sacred and solemn. Just as the Demon King Palace's Saint Realm expert was about to suppress the 2 women, a mighty and muscular figure suddenly appeared in front of him. Then, without saying a single word, he threw out a punch. You're courting death. Green-winged demon's eyes trembled. He reached out with his claws, trying to stop the armored figure. But, the moment their palms collided, he was sent flying. Blood spurted out of his mouth, and his feathers scattered. He finally fell on the mountain peak. Are you going to give up, or do you want me to beat you until you give up? Yi Qingchan stepped on the mountain peak. She was cold all over. The space under his feet was frozen into a seal. It was like a snow lotus emitting a bright, immortal glow. Hua Sun's eyes trembled. He suddenly felt a chill in his heart when he saw the demon-controlling sect prodigies being crushed. "All right, then I'll beat you until you give up." Yi Qingchan did not say anything. She pushed her hand forward, and endless wind and frost swept across the sky. Even a peak venerate would not be able to resist such divine power, let alone an 8th rank venerate like Hua Sun. Hua Sun clenched her teeth as she looked at the ice crystals falling from the sky. She hadn't made a choice yet? This green-clothed woman was clearly targeting her. Buzz! Behind him, the pair of transparent wings flapped gently, and he was about to escape. However, right at this moment, Yi Qingchan's lips curled into a charming smile. "Do you think you can escape?" In the blink of an eye, the originally scattered ice crystals suddenly bloomed with a dazzling brilliance. On the other hand, numerous crystalline ice walls suddenly floated up into appearance in an area of around 3 m around Hua Sun, and they directly trapped her within them like a sparrow that was unable to escape. After she was done, Yi Qingchan turned around and glared at Su Yan. Her eyes were filled with killing intent as she disappeared from the spot. Everyone who was hostile to the young master deserved to die. No! Gods should also die. Boom! Ling Xiao did not pay any attention to the fluctuations coming from above his head. With Yi Qingchan's temperament, she knew who to kill and who not to kill. At this moment, his gaze was fixed on the ruins of the temple, quietly waiting for Nanmuyun to appear. The devouring Tao Law. Obviously, the strange fluctuation that Ling Xiao felt just now should be the power of this Tao Law. It seemed that the devouring Tao Law was indeed very fragrant. Before Hua Hua had transformed, Ling Xiao had once wanted to stew her to nourish his body. However, in the end, it was because of this Tao Law and the ancestral dragon bloodline that Ling Xiao vaguely felt that the upper limit of this demonic dragon might not be much lower than that of the destined one. This way, she could be considered to have saved her life. Ling Xiao raised his head and looked at the mountain river celestial demon painting that spread across the sky. With his strength, it was not difficult to destroy this painting. However, the power of this divine painting was not bad, and it was a pity to destroy it for nothing. Housekeeping was good. Boom! Just as Ling Xiao was secretly muttering to himself, a loud noise suddenly came from the ruins of the temple. Immediately after, Nanmuyun's figure appeared in front of everyone again. At this moment, the blue robe on his body had long been torn, revealing a white jade spirit armor. However, what was shocking was that the spirit armor on his chest had long been completely shattered, and traces of blood seeped out. It was obvious that even with the protection of the divine armor, Ling Xiao's punch still broke his bones. "Ling Xiao, you are indeed as powerful as the rumors say. I was careless just now." Nanmuyang took a deep breath, and there was no trace of panic on his face. Compared to the other children of destiny, his temperament was undoubtedly more tenacious. Immediately after, he took a step forward, and the spirit light around him surged. Vaguely, there seemed to be a devouring power enveloping the surroundings, devouring all the spirit qi in the void. From afar, Nanmuyang was like a black hole in the universe, devouring everything. The black divine light gushed out, and the land within a radius of 1,000 feet turned into a deep demonic abyss. Even the light that fell into it dissipated instantly. Nanmuyang's figure soon appeared in front of Ling Xiao, and he threw out a punch. However, this time, he obviously came prepared. The arm that he stretched out turned into the sharp claw of a demonic beast, and it was filled with a vast demonic power. Ling Xiao's eyes turned cold, and he threw out a punch as well. The moment the two fists collided, the whole world burst into a dazzling light. The void trembled, and heaven and earth trembled. Boom! However, to everyone's surprise, Nanmuyun, who was sent flying by Ling Xiao's punch just now, only retreated a few feet before he regained his balance. Although he was in a bit of a mess, he was far stronger than before. In fact, There was clearly a trace of a smile on his face. His aura had clearly risen after this punch. There's something strange about this Nan Muyun. His aura has actually risen. I've heard that this young Lord Nan Muyun's demonic beast taming is a bit strange. He becomes stronger when he meets a strong opponent. Once he's stalled, it's basically impossible for him to turn the tables. Could it be that Master Ling Xiao is going to be defeated today? The group of Heavenly Imperial Mansion disciples whispered among themselves. After witnessing how terrifying Ling Xiao was, Nan Muyun's current performance was already terrifying. Devouring spiritual energy and turning it into his own? Ling Xiao lowered his head and looked at his palm. There was no trace of emotion on his face. He had already guessed Nan Muyun's trump card. When fighting with him, once one's principle came into contact with his attack, the spiritual energy in the attack would be devoured and turned into his own strength. This method was indeed extremely terrifying. It would be very difficult for ordinary monstrous geniuses to fight him head-on. However, there was always a limit to the devouring power. How could Nan Muyun's physical strength be compared to Ling Xiao's? Since you want to devour, I'll let you devour as much as you want. Ling Xiao smiled. In the next instant, he suddenly took a step forward and threw a punch at Nan Muyun. Chapter 1469. Huh! Looking at the figure that suddenly appeared in front of him, Nan Muyang was obviously a little surprised. Could it be that this young master of the Ling people was a brute? It was impossible for him not to feel his power being devoured, and it was impossible for him not to notice the changes in his body. However, he seemed to be fearless and still rushed over in such a rude and unreasonable manner. Pfft! Nan Muyun shook his head and smiled, a cold light flashing in his eyes. Since that's the case, young Master Ling Xiao, I'll accept your gift. Boom! The terrifying black light completely exploded. At this time, Nan Muyun had already activated his devouring power to the limit. As Ling Xiao's punch landed, his figure flew backward again. Then, before he could completely stabilize himself, he saw the young master of the Ling people's figure strangely appear in front of him. Boom! Another punch. At this time, Nan Muyun did not have the time to breathe at all. In fact, even the power that he had just devoured could not be integrated in time and turned into his own spiritual energy. Suddenly, Nan Muyun seemed to have understood something. This young master of the Ling people was planning to use this method to break his devouring power. Could this be the legendary speed is the only thing that is invincible in the world? In front of the main hall, everyone stared dumbfoundedly at the young master of the demon controlling sect who was being hammered all the way to the ground. Their eyes were full of shock and horror. Especially the few people from the Heavenly Imperial Palace, their mouths were slightly open and they could not stop swallowing their saliva. What was an invincible immortal? Previously, when Ling Xiao smashed Xiao Shan's body, they had already seen the terrifying power of this young master. However, at this time, in the face of Nan Muyun's strange method, this young master of the Ling people chose to ignore it directly and completely destroyed all the laws of cultivation. Strong. Too strong. In the face of this absolute power, all methods were in vain. I don't believe it. At this time, Nan Muyun was also extremely sullen. The devouring power outside his body was about to be completely dispersed by Ling Xiao. If this continued, it would not be long before he was completely at a disadvantage. Get out of my way! Nan Muyun bellowed and clenched his fist before he smashed it out. Under his fist, a strange black vortex suddenly appeared and annihilated everything. This power had already completely surpassed the scope of this world. Wherever the fist passed, even space began to collapse and vanish, unable to recover. But, just as Nan Muyun's attack was about to land on Ling Xiao, the young man suddenly disappeared from where he stood. This kind of feeling was like punching cotton. It was really sullen to the extreme. Before Nan Muyang could react, another ear-piercing sound was heard from behind him. Puchi! With the might of Ling Zhao's polychoria, he could easily travel through space in a small area. Nan Muyun, on the other hand, had obviously reached the point where he was flustered and exasperated. He only needed to fiddle with him a little more and this chosen one would completely collapse. Boom! Ling Zhao's fist landed and directly scattered the black spirit light around Nanmyun. Even the armor on his body was shattered by this tremendous force, revealing his broken back. Nanmyun's figure once again smashed into the square, raising waves of smoke and dust. Ling Zhao stood in the void with his hands behind his back, his eyes calm. To be honest, this Nanmyun did have some strength, especially that devouring power, which was really mysterious. If it was an ordinary Saint Stage chosen one, they would have been smashed into pieces by Ling Zhao's several punches. However, at this time, Ling Zhao also had some guesses that Nanmyun's devouring Dao Law should not be so terrifying. This devouring power was probably related to the imperial demon that he had fused with. Roar! At this moment, an angry roar suddenly came from the smoke and dust. Immediately, a black demon shadow broke through the void and directly appeared in front of Ling Zhao. It was a strange demon beast that was pitch black and covered in golden stripes. Its appearance was like a unicorn, with 4 slender legs but a human face. Sharp fangs protruded from its mouth, and there were 4 eyes on its face. At this time, it was just a shadow that stood outside of Nanmyun, enveloping his entire body. Tao Tai! With just one look, Ling Zhao knew the origin of this fierce demon. No wonder this Imperial Demon Clan young master could comprehend such a terrifying Dao Law of devouring. It turned out that the Imperial Demon that he had contracted was this ancient fierce beast Tao Tai. Roar! Nanmyun's hands formed a seal, and the Tao Tai great demon above his head also stretched out 2 claws, clenching them like a human hand, and brazenly pressed down on Ling Zhao. Seeing this, Ling Zhao's eyes were calm. With a shift of his mind, a ray of golden light suddenly rose from the top of his head, turning into a dragon shadow that was 100 feet long, standing between heaven and earth, overlooking the vast sea. An indescribably terrifying demonic aura fell from the sky, instantly causing all the demons present to tense up and want to kneel on the ground. Especially the few disciples of the Imperial Demon Clan. At this time, they were even more flustered and frightened. Their bodies went soft, and because they were not careful, Xianyuan Weiyang's halberd swept across and smashed their bodies. This is Nanmyun's face almost instantly turned blank. Even the Tao Tai inside his body showed signs of trembling. Never in his dreams did he expect that this Ling people's young master would have such pure dragon power in his body. Moreover, this dragon power was not something that the mixed-blood dragons in the Azure world could compare to. This was the true ancestral dragon's power. How was this possible? Everyone knew that at the end of the Eldritch Age, the ancestral dragon wreaked havoc and almost devoured the heavenly Tao. In the end, he was killed by the joint forces of thousands of tribes. Since then, he had turned into 10 ancestral dragon bloodlines and was no longer as powerful as before. Even these 10 ancestral dragons were slaughtered by the powerful cultivators of various tribes for the heavenly Tao's saint luck in their bodies. Not to mention the Azure world, even in the immortal realm, it was hard to say if there were any ancestral dragon bloodlines left. Could it be the Ling people? Nanmyun frowned. At this time, it was useless to worry too much. He circulated all the spiritual energy in his body and poured it into the Taotia's shadow. Buzz! Suddenly, the world turned dark and Tao patterns appeared. A devouring spiritual spiral appeared under each of the Taotia's claws and pressed toward Ling Zhao. Seeing this, Ling Zhao's lips curled into a smile. Golden scales appeared on his arms. He also stretched out 2 palms and collided with Nanmyun. At this time, in front of Chen Daonian, he did not use the power of the Sky Demon. Otherwise, it would be troublesome if this heavenly imperial mansion elder saw through it. Rumble! The moment the two attacks collided, the entire blood-feather sacred mountain collapsed. Countless figures fled one after another. Their eyes were filled with shock. In the void, a dragon and a beast stood in the sky and let out a deafening roar. The ancestral dragon versus the Tautai. Such a visual impact almost caused the Tao hearts of many God-Emperor disciples to crumble on the spot. Chapter 1470. Boundless ripples surged out in all directions, destroying all the mountains and forests it came into contact with. The vast demonic aura swept across thousands of miles, shaking heaven and earth. Just as everyone was looking at the top of the sky in fear, they saw a figure once again flying backwards in a sorry state. Blood spurted out, and both of his arms were actually broken. At this time, the Taotia's shadow around Nanmuyun had already dissipated, revealing his almost broken body. He looked extremely miserable. His face was also filled with fear and anger, and he was no longer as calm as before. However, before Nanmuyun's figure landed on the ground, a black-robed figure stepped down from the sky. His clothes fluttered in the wind, and he looked like an immortal. Compared to Nanmuyun's sorry state, Ling Zhao's current demeanor was otherworldly, and there was not a trace of uneasiness at all. It was as if in front of this young master of the Ling people, the 100 great talents, and the ancient ferocious beasts were all nothing. Even Hua Sun, who was trapped in the ice prison, was in a daze. Her heart trembled slightly, and she almost collapsed. She had already guessed the reason why Yi Qinchan did not kill her. No matter what identity Ling Xiao had, he was probably more honorable than the young master of the demon-controlling sect. This could be clearly seen from his appearance and temperament. Most of these young masters and young masters from the upper realm were here for the sinful immortal ruins. She would soon become this black-robed young master's servant and lead him to find the other bronze fragments. This was an opportunity, but she would also bear the crime of betraying the Demon King Palace and the demon-controlling sect. Suddenly, Hua Sun's clothes were drenched in cold sweat. "Young Master Nanmuyun, it looks like you've lost this time." Ling Xiao stepped down from the sky and looked down at Nanmuyun. He gently clenched his hand, and he was about to kill this chosen one. "No! I didn't lose. How can I lose?" Nanmuyun's eyes were bloodshot. He gritted his teeth, and 2 bloody eyes suddenly opened on his forehead. It was extremely strange. His entire body suddenly expanded, revealing his fangs and fur, and he turned into a half-demon, half-human form. The true strength of the demon control sect lay in the fusion of human and demon powers. It was obvious that Nanmuyun, who was at the end of his rope, had finally revealed his most powerful technique. Buzz! Boundless black light soared into the sky like a curtain of night, enveloping heaven and earth. Some of the weaker immortal form sect disciples were sucked in by an invisible force and were directly swallowed into nothingness. Ling Xiao narrowed his eyes. Just as he was about to use his polychoria to retreat, he realized that the entire space was engulfed by the devouring power. Whether it was Taoist laws, spiritual power, or spiritual power, as long as they were used, they would be devoured immediately. "Ling Xiao, no matter how strong you are, you will only become my stepping stone and nourishment on my path to becoming a martial emperor. Once I devour you, all of your power will be mine." Nanmuyun laughed wildly, his rationality completely overshadowed by his ferocious nature. The reason why he didn't take out this demonic body immediately was because this big ancient demon's ferocious nature was too terrifying. When the two powers merged, his temperament would more or less be affected. Besides him and Ling Xiao, there was also a group of people from the heavenly imperial palace. Once, if he really unleashed his murderous nature, the consequences would be unimaginable. However, he couldn't care less. He didn't want to care about anything else. He just wanted to devour this arrogant young man and obtain all of his power to wash away his humiliation. Roar! Nanmyun roared into the sky. The black curtain above his head suddenly fell and instantly enveloped the entire space where Ling Xiao was. The terrifying devouring power surged wildly and directly devoured the entire space into nothingness. Even light and spiritual energy were all annihilated in one breath. This was a forbidden land for living beings. Seeing the two figures disappear at the same time, Chen Daoyan and the others' eyes trembled. They wanted to say something but stopped. What the f***ck, isn't this over? Ling people's young master was killed by the young master of the demon control sect? Once this news spread to the Azure world, do you think the Ling people will directly attack and destroy the demon control sect? Even as onlookers, they would probably be implicated as well. Clan leader Qinchan, do you want to? Chen Daoyan turned his head and looked at Yi Qinchan and the other two girls who fell from the sky. His lips trembled slightly. He didn't know why, but when he looked at the three girls, except for Princess Xianyuan who was obviously worried, Yi Qinchan and Su Yan didn't seem to be worried at all. No need. It's just a sage. Yi Qinchan shook her head. Based on her understanding of Ling Xiao, it was impossible for him to be defeated by someone of the same generation as him. There were many invincible people in the world, mostly because they had never met their young master. Her young master could be said to be invincible in the world. Ow! Alright. Chen Daoyan's lips trembled slightly. In the end, he didn't say anything more. Instead, he looked up at the sky. At this time, the black curtain had already turned into clouds. It vaguely looked like the fierce shadow of a Taotai, filled with an ancient ferocity. Within the black curtain, Ling Xiao coldly looked at the terrifying demon in the distance. There was no trace of emotion in his eyes. Ling Xiao. Nanmyun smiled sinisterly. His eyes were extremely evil. He was completely different from the image of a cultured and elegant young master. At this time, all four of his eyes were blood red and looked extremely sinister. Once you fall into my Taotai realm, even if you're at the peak of the sage realm, you will be devoured into nothingness. Before I completely lose my mind, it may not be too late for you to admit defeat now. Your Taotai realm can devour any kind of power? Ling Xiao frowned slightly. He seemed to be somewhat puzzled. Ha 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 ha, fear. In here, all forms of power will become my nourishment. Soul power, spiritual power, and even the power of essence and blood. Hiss. The power of essence and blood is so terrifying. Ling Xiao nodded slightly. He was still somewhat puzzled. You're at the first level of the sage realm, but you should have more than one saint rune, right? That's right. Ling Xiao, to tell you the truth, I have a total of 5 saint runes in my elixir sea. So, let alone you, no one in the Azure world can be my opponent. Nanmyun laughed wildly. His eyes were filled with the joy of revenge. Oh, 5 saint runes. As everyone knew, some false saints, no matter what level they broke through, would only have 1 saint rune in their lifetime. If one wanted to enter the honorable state, one would need to condense at least 9 saint runes. Ordinary geniuses would try to condense 1 saint rune when they broke through to the first level. In the end, they would reach the honorable state with 9 saint runes. Some monstrous geniuses would borrow the power of heaven and earth to condense as many saint runes as possible when they entered the sage realm. First level of the sage realm, 5 saint runes. It was indeed a supreme talent. However, compared to Ling Xiao, it was really not worth mentioning. I think you won't shed a tear until you see the coffin. Seeing Ling Xiao's calm expression, Nanmyun could no longer suppress the anger in his heart. The moment his eyes changed, a terrifying devouring power rushed out. In a breath's time, the entire great world was filled with mighty spiritual power. 10,000 Dao no longer existed. Chapter 1471. Buzz. The vast divine power almost swallowed a black hole in the void, as if it was connected to another unknown world. The wind and clouds within thousands of miles turned into a vortex and gathered in the mouth of the Taotai shadow. At this time, even the people in front of the main hall felt a terrifying devouring power spreading from the sky, robbing all the vitality and spiritual aura. It was easy to imagine what kind of apocalyptic scene it was inside the body of the fierce shadow. Ling Xiao, you forced me to do this. Nan Muyun's eyes were scarlet and fierce. At this time, he had completely merged with the Taotai realm and was devouring the spiritual power in Ling Xiao's body. Moreover, he could clearly see the fluctuations of spiritual power circulating around the youth's body. Delicious. Too delicious. Who would have thought that the young master of the Ling people, who was known as the invincible young master of the world, would be defeated by him in such a miserable way? Since you want to devour, I'll let you devour as much as you want. However, in the face of such a terrifying power, Ling Xiao's face was still calm. Then, he suddenly opened his soul sea and elixir sea and took the initiative to let go of all his defenses. In an instant, long rivers of spiritual power meandered out and filled the world. The boundless soul light lit up the sky, illuminating the space inside the Taotai shadow as bright as day. In just a moment, Nan Muyun's expression became dull. At this time, he seemed to see the sacred runes quietly lighting up on the young man's elixir sea. 1, 2, 3. 81 sacred runes. How is this possible? An indescribably terrifying aura surged into his body like a tidal wave. 81 sacred runes. A sovereign divine soul. How was this possible? How absurd! At this time, Nan Muyun was completely stunned. He frowned at the young man in front of him, feeling that all of this was just an illusion. It was so shocking that it was beyond what he could accept. If all of this was real, Ling Xiao could not be a human at all. Even an immortal could not condense 81 sacred runes. In the billions of eras of heaven and earth, there had never been a monster who could condense 81 sacred runes. This did not make sense. Boom! As the spiritual power entered his body, Nan Muyun's body suddenly expanded. Even though he had merged with the Tao Tai's divine power, he was still in the sage realm. The range that he could withstand was only in the sage realm. Ling Xiao was naturally aware of this. However, all Heaven's Mandate cultivators had terrifying trump cards that could allow them to surpass their cultivation realms to kill their enemies and turn the tables around to slap their own faces. However, this trump card must have its limit. If there were no restrictions, there would be no ups and downs. How could there be a high point in the plot? Gao Chao, as the name implies, has to rise, fall again and again, sigh step by step, and finally reach the peak. With Nan Muyun's level of cultivation, he might have been able to trap or even devour someone at the peak of the Saint Plane. However, although Ling Xiao's strength was not at the peak level, the spiritual energy in his body was not something that a saint could compare to. Boom boom! Divine might surged and was endlessly devoured by the realm, which then merged into Nan Muyun's body. In just a short moment, the latter's body had already surpassed its limit. It was like a meatball that could collapse at any time. Stop! Stop! Ling Xiao! I admit defeat, I admit defeat. At this moment, Nan Muyun finally understood how ridiculous his previous thoughts were. Perhaps, from the beginning to the end, in the eyes of this young master of the Ling people, he was an insignificant clown. Crushing. They were not on the same level at all. Young master, I'm willing to submit. Please, spare. Submit? Ling Xiao raised his eyebrows slightly and seemed to be pondering. However, the moment Nan Muyun relaxed his mind, he saw the spiritual light outside the young man's body suddenly flourish and burst his physical body and divine soul into pieces. Beat! Congratulations to the host for successfully using the luck-plundering talisman. You have gained 14,000 luck points and 140,000 villain points. Beep. Congratulations to the host for successfully killing the Son of Destiny. You have obtained an additional reward, Devouring Principle. Beep. Congratulations to the host for successfully killing the Son of Destiny. You have obtained an additional reward, one chance to perfect the principle. Devouring Principle, perfect. Ling Xiao stood in the void with his hands behind his back. His eyes were indifferent as he looked at the Taotai realm that was about to shatter. In his hand, he was holding a bronze fragment. The immortal charm on it was unrestrained and contained supreme mystery. It was not that subduing the young master of the demon-controlling sect was not beneficial to him. On the contrary, controlling him was equivalent to controlling the future of the demon-controlling sect. However, Ling Xiao had no idea how long it would take for this future to arrive. Now that the great era had arrived and the world was in chaos, it was obvious that he did not have much patience to wait for Nanmuyun to grow. Moreover, the devouring principle was too tempting. In Ling Xiao's opinion, controlling this power in his own hands was far more valuable than the demon-controlling sect. Therefore, Nanmuyun was dead. Boom! Heaven and earth trembled. Then, everyone was stunned to see that the fierce shadow of the Taotai that originally shrouded the sky was suddenly pierced by a ray of divine light. At first, it was only a ray of dazzling brilliance. Then, thousands of rays of divine light bloomed in the sky, shattering the black curtain and illuminating the world. The blazing brilliance directly blocked everyone's vision, and they subconsciously lowered their heads. Soon, the world returned to calm, and the divine light and black light disappeared. A black-robed figure stood in the sky and slowly walked over. At this time, there was not the slightest bit of dispiritedness on his body. There was not even a trace of injury. He was calm and composed. The young master of the demon-controlling sect, who was originally fighting with him, had disappeared without a trace. This, Chen Daoyan and the others narrowed their eyes, but they all had guesses in their hearts. It was obvious that after using such a trump card, this battle could only be a situation where one side would not stop until one side was dead. Since Master Ling Xiao was safe and sound, it could only mean that Nanmuyun was dead. Buzz. With a thought, Ling Xiao put the 100 swords into the 1,000-weapon Tao scripture. Then, he waved his hand and caught the mountain sea divine demon painting that fell from the sky. Only then did he land in front of everyone. Young master! Yi Qingchan and the others immediately gathered around with smiles in their eyes. Yi Qingchan, in particular, hugged Ling Xiao's arm, her eyes full of concern. Yes, she did not believe that there was anyone in the world who could defeat Ling Xiao. However, it did not mean that she was not worried. Even the slightest injury was enough to make her heart ache. I'm fine. Ling Xiao smiled faintly and handed the mountain sea divine demon painting to Yi Qingchan. Then, he looked up at Hua Sun, who was trapped in the ice prison, and the corners of his mouth curled up into a smile. Yi Qingchan immediately understood. She waved her jade-like hand and shattered the ice prison. Plop! At this time, Hua Sun was no longer as calm as before. Although she had guessed that Nanmuyun would lose this battle, she did not expect that he would be beaten to a pulp. What did this mean? It meant that the young man in front of her was not afraid of the demon-controlling sect's revenge at all. Hiss! Chapter 1472. You're the saintess of the Demon King Palace? Ling Xiao walked up to the girl kneeling on the ground and asked calmly. I used to be. Hua Sun's bright eyes trembled, showing a hint of submission. Give me a reason not to kill you. Ling Xiao nodded and smiled. He liked to deal with smart people. It was obvious that Hua Sun already had the intention to submit to him. Of course, to Ling Xiao now, a girl with 7,000 providence was no longer worth his time and effort to play with. However, he was interested in the girl's ability. Young master, I'm Hua Sun. I'm a flower fairy and I'm very sensitive to auras. So, if you're looking for something, young master, I can help you. Hua Sun pursed her red lips and put on a pitiful look. Sensitive to auras? Ling Xiao shook his head. He wanted to find the bronze fragment, but his method was much simpler and more direct than Hua Sun's. Such a treasure that was related to the secrets of heaven and earth would definitely be in the hands of the destined person. No matter how crowded the crowd was, Ling Xiao could always see the golden figure in the crowd. On the other hand, Hua Sun had to be close to the bronze fragment to sense its existence. So, this reason was not enough. Seeing that Ling Xiao was unmoved, Hua Sun's hair was instantly wet and cold sweat broke out. Young master, the talent of the Flower Fairy clan is to nurture plants. My spiritual energy is very good for nurturing plants. Also, I can collect the essence of plants and turn it into a spiritual source. Oh? Nurturing plants? Ling Xiao raised his eyebrows and nodded gently under Hua Sun's horrified gaze. Then you can follow me. This talent was similar to Han Zhan's immortal tablet. However, Ling Xiao guessed that Hua Sun's ability was probably not as good as Han Zhan's. However, who would mind having a hard-working gardener in their garden? What's more, this little butterfly was witty and sensible. Wouldn't it be nice to keep her in captivity and watch her collect honey when she was free? That pair of small wings, it must be very hard to pull it, right? Thank you, young master. Many thanks, young master. Hua Sun cried tears of joy. His cheeks were red, and it was hard to tell if he was sad or happy. Young master, after meeting you, I realized that the place with the most water in the world is not the ocean. Beat. Congratulations to the host for gaining the allegiance of the Daughter of Destiny. Received 7,000 luck points and 70,000 villain points. Hee hee. Congratulations to young master for obtaining another good servant. Chun Daonian and the others came from afar and bowed to Ling Xiao. At this moment, the elder of the heavenly imperial manor no longer had the cold arrogance he had when they first met. Instead, he was extremely humble. Elder Chen, thank you for your hard work. Ling Xiao smiled indifferently. With the power he controlled, it was enough to kill this elder of the heavenly imperial residence. However, there was no need for that. Whether it was Qiao Shan's death or Nanmuyun's death, it seemed that they deserved it. Ling Xiao could not be blamed at all. On the contrary, if he was alive, the world would know what happened in the lower bound and how Ling Xiao was so righteous and unwavering in fighting against the demons. Look, Qiao Shan colluded with the sinners and was killed by Master Ling Xiao. If the young master wanted to hide the truth, he could have just killed these disciples of the heavenly imperial residence. However, he did not. What did that mean? It meant that the young master was magnanimous. He was open and upright. He did not let any demons go, but he also did not wrong a good person. Wasn't that bragging? Of course, with Chun Daonian's temperament, after seeing how terrifying Ling Xiao was, he did not dare to make the heavenly imperial residence his enemy. Therefore, when he returned to Qingtsang, it was more likely that he would push all the blame onto the dead Qiao Shan and use this opportunity to curry favor with the Ling people so that the young master of the Ling people would not use this as an excuse to cause trouble for the heavenly imperial residence. This was what they meant by the weak are unreasonable. Not at all, not at all. The young master has personally eradicated the demons and purified the demonists. I really admire you. I have decided that when I return to Qingtsang, I will report everything that happened here to the mansion master and punish Qiao Shan severely. Chen Daonian hurriedly shook his head with a serious expression. Ling Xiao, on the other hand, smiled and shook his head. There is no need for that. I did not kill demons for fame. I just wanted to protect the justice of the world. I believe that justice is in the hearts of the people. Young master is righteous. Hearing that, Chun Daonian's old face trembled. He suddenly bowed to Ling Xiao. All right, this trip is considered complete. The Blood Feather tribe has been eradicated. Elder, shall we meet again? Ling Xiao's expression was gentle and natural. There was no trace of deliberate intention at all. Meet again? I originally wanted to continue basking in the light of righteousness with you, but… Oh! If that is the case, we shall not disturb you any further. Young master, until we meet again. Chen Daoyan's eyes narrowed. He wished he could slap himself. He hurriedly bowed to Ling Xiao and turned around to call the heavenly imperial resident's disciples to fly away. It was as if he was afraid that Ling Xiao would go back on his word. Seeing that, Xianyuan Weiyang sneered. But when he saw the solemn faces of Yi Qingchan, Su Yan, and the others, he immediately blushed. He hurriedly lowered his head and looked nervously at Ling Xiao. Fortunately, the young master was not angry. That's right, that's right. Elder Chen's behavior was too funny. He was obviously scared to death, but he pretended that he did not want to leave. Sect leader Hua, go and look through the treasury of the Blood Feather tribe. Take it as a reward for this trip to the Immortal Form sect. Ling Xiao said indifferently as he looked up at the sky. It had been a few days since he came to the lower domain. He wondered how lively Qing Tsang would be now. Those monsters who had lost their respect should take this opportunity to take the stage. Ling Xiao only needed to give them some time to perform. When he returned to Qing Tsang, he would know who was boss and who was ghost. Thank you, young master. Are you planning to leave? The Immortal Form sect leader hesitated. Yes, Feng Prefecture and Ning Prefecture are already stable. It's time for me to go to other places. Ling Xiao nodded. He had already arrived in 3 of the 9 prefectures. Now that he thought about it, the other 6 prefectures were already in turmoil. As time passed, whether it was the heavenly fate of this world or the monstrous geniuses from the upper domain, they would most likely know about the existence of the bronze shards. Under such circumstances, the heavenly fate would most likely kill each other. It was time to cut them off. As for the Blood Feather tribe's foundation, it was a sinful tribe. When they were suppressed in the lower domain, their foundation had probably been taken away by the Realm Lord. Even if they had some foundation, it would be a pile of scrap metal that was not worth mentioning. After all, this tribe did not have any providence. It was difficult for them to have any opportunities. Young master, this old servant has a presumptuous request. The Immortal Form sect leader suddenly bowed deeply to Ling Xiao. Since it's a presumptuous request, there's no need to say it. As soon as he finished speaking, Ling Xiao directly raised his leg and summoned the dragon carriage. He hugged Yi Qingchan and Su Yan as they sat in the carriage, their expressions languid. As for Xianyuan Weiyang, she was pouting slightly as she sat at the side resentfully, her brows filled with disappointment. Sister Qingchan, you don't mean what you say. You said that you would take the initiative to create opportunities for me, but every time… Hua Sun, you drive the carriage. Yes, young master. Roar! The wind and clouds suddenly changed. The golden dragon soared into the sky and flew towards the distant mountains. Chapter 1473. Sigh. The Immortal Form sect master stood up and sighed softly after the dragon carriage disappeared into the distance. His presumptuous request just now was actually not for himself, but for Hua Fei. Young Master Ling Xiao had many beauties by his side. In the Immortal Form sect master's opinion, Hua Fei was one of them as well. Not to mention that Hua Sun had been taken in as a servant by his side. Hua Fei was indeed not as beautiful as Yi Qingchan, but she was still one of the top beauties in the human race. She should be fine as a servant, right? But the young master did not even give him a chance to speak. Of course, the Immortal Form sect master could not figure it out no matter how hard he racked his brains. A girl with no luck, ordinary talent, and an ordinary background had no value at all. Father. In the crowd, Hua Fei also had a disappointed look on her face. However, she was mentally prepared. But what else could she ask for? Without the young master, she would have died in Lin Yan's hands, and the entire immortal form sect would have been destroyed by the blood feather race. Therefore, meeting Ling Xiao was already a blessing for Hua Fei. Let's go and see if there are any treasures in the blood feather race that Fei like. The immortal form sect master laughed heartily and led Hua Fei to the mountain behind the blood feather race. At the same time, in the sky above, Ling Xiao held a jade cup and sipped the spirit wine. Not bad, this spirit wine made from the essence of plants is indeed a little strange. Hua Sun, do you know where I can find the bronze fragments? Young master, I don't have any at the moment, but… Hua Sun hesitated with a nervous expression. On my way to the blood feather race, I heard that there was a strange phenomenon at the Dead Spirit Reef. Oh? The Dead Spirit Reef? Ling Xiao raised his eyebrows with a faint smile. Just from the name alone, one could tell that it was a dangerous place. Furthermore, places like this always hid great fortunes. Yes, it is said that this place is the place where an evil cultivator secluded himself. There are countless dead souls there, but… Hua Sun's eyes flickered with fear. When the sacred emperor unified the Xingzhou, he used his divine power to seal this place. It has been thousands of years since anything happened. Sealed by the sage emperor? Ling Xiao nodded lightly, and he increasingly felt that this Dead Spirit Reef was definitely not ordinary. Tell me more about the Dead Soul Reef. Yes. Young master, this forbidden area is located in the Sea of Ghosts at the border of the Ocean Province, and it is publicly acknowledged as a forbidden area in the 9 prefectures. Hua Sun's voice was dignified. Although the Demon King's palace was a force, it was the Holy Land in the eyes of the demon clans all over the 9 regions. Therefore, he had some understanding of the secrets of the 9 prefectures. Now that Hua Sun had chosen to betray the demon-controlling sect, she naturally had to work hard to be Ling Xiao's maidservant. The more valuable she was, the more likely she would be appreciated by the young master. Of course, although the ocean continent is not as prosperous as the Ning continent, there are still many forces there. Among them, the Yao Yu ancient dynasty is the strongest force in the ocean continent. The monarch of this ancient dynasty is a woman. She is extremely domineering and her cultivation is terrifying. But what? However, a year ago, this empress suddenly married a mortal as her husband. This is really surprising. Empress? A mortal as her husband? Hearing this, Ling Xiao's face blossomed into a smile. It was not that he was interested in this empress. How could a mere empress of a lower realm be compared to Gu Chaoci? However, this mortal as her husband was somewhat interesting. It was said that recently, a group of Heaven's Mandate had been hiding in the Empress Palace, and they were secretly invincible? It's not that I can't live off a woman, but I, Ling Xiao, am not convinced that they are invincible. Is this reason sufficient? That's right. This husband of the Yao Yu Empress is really thick-skinned. It is said that he spends all his time in the palace, eating and waiting for death. No matter how much people humiliate him, he never gets angry. Hua Sun shook her head and smiled. She would never have thought that the person she was mocking might be the strongest Heaven's Mandate in the 9 prefectures. Let's go to the Yao Yu ancient dynasty and meet this Yao Yu Empress and her useless husband. Ling Xiao smiled. Before this useless husband of hers revealed his true identity, there would be no real feelings between the two of them. In other words, the emotional transition would usually occur after this empress husband revealed his true strength. Damn! My husband is so awesome? The empress was no longer domineering. Instead, she became gentle and docile. This was the perfect reversal of the plot. However, in this lower realm, this son of Heaven's Mandate would not surpass the Saint realm. How could he compete with Ling Xiao? Yes, young master. Hua Sun steered the chariot toward Ocean Province. Ling Xiao suddenly thought of something and said calmly, "By the way, Hua Sun, how many saints does the Yao Yu Palace have?" "Young master, there are 5 Saint Realm experts in the Demon King Palace. The strongest one is Old Ancestor Golden Lion, who is at the 7th level of the Saint Realm. The other 4 elders are at the 3rd or 4th level of the Saint Realm. However, Elder Qingpeng has already been." Hua Sun smiled awkwardly. Then, she seemed to have thought of something and her eyes narrowed. 7th level Saint Realm. Ling Xiao nodded slightly and said no more. Meanwhile, in the realm, Ling Zhao's Taoist body stood in the heavenly palace with his hands behind his back. In front of him stood Xiong Huan, Shi Patian, Brute Devil, and Folded Shadow. The 4 of them were all at the Saint Realm, and their combat strength was terrifying. They could even fight the peak saints of the upper world, let alone the fake saints of the 9 prefectures. Since the Yao Yu Palace belonged to the Yao Yu sect, Ling Xiao had no intention of letting them go. "The 4 of you, go to the Yao Yu Palace and wipe out this sect," Ling Xiao said indifferently. Xiong Huan and the other 3 immediately bowed. "Yes, my lord." "By the way, Folded Shadow, how's the training of the hidden guards?" "My lord, they can act alone now." Folded Shadow bowed. Ling Xiao nodded slightly. "Take them with you. They will be responsible for hunting down the experts of the Yao Yu Palace. You will provide support from the side. Xiong Huan will stay behind." "Yes." The 4 of them bowed once more before turning around and disappearing. Although the strength of these secret guards was mostly at the Exalted Realm, they should know how to conceal themselves and assassinate opponents who were stronger than them. The Yao Yu Palace was a good stepping stone to help them transcend themselves and become the true masters of the hidden path. Of course, some of them would die in the process. This was why Ling Xiao chose the Yao Yu Palace. In the lower world, the death of the hidden guards would not bring much danger to Ling Xiao. Even if the Yao Yu Palace knew Ling Xiao's identity, they would not be able to threaten him. However, once they returned to the Azure Continent, they would face great danger every time they went on a mission. If something went wrong, the consequences would be devastating. This was a test and a crucial battle to determine whether they could become pawns in the upper world. Chapter 1474. Ocean State, Yao Yu Ancient Dynasty. This ancient dynasty was the oldest force in the Ocean State. The empress of this dynasty was called Ling Qianma. She had reached the Saint Realm at the age of 900. Her talent and appearance were top-notch in the 9 states. She attracted countless strong cultivators to pursue her. What made people feel strange was that the empress, who was known as the most beautiful woman in the 9 provinces, suddenly married a scholar a year ago and gave him the title of free and unfettered king, enjoying unparalleled honor and glory. It would be fine if this scholar came from a famous family or was extremely talented. However, this person had no cultivation and no background. He became the laughing stock of the 9 states. People even gave him the title of 9 states #1 freeloader. When the 2 of them got married, countless strong cultivators came to the imperial court to celebrate. When they saw how useless this person was, they were all furious. Only the Yao Yu Empress seemed to be unaware of it. She was willing to marry him. It was really puzzling. Now, with the appearance of the Dead Souls Reef, some of the sealed evil spirits took the opportunity to come out of the Forbidden Land and wreak havoc. As the first barrier in the 9 states, the Yao Yu ancient dynasty had been invaded by the evil spirit. How is the situation at the front? In the first pass of the Yao Yu ancient dynasty, Shu Hai City, a beautiful woman wearing a golden imperial robe and a purple gold phoenix crown stood with her hands behind her back. She looked at the mountain stream in the distance with cold eyes. There, a layer of death chi spread across the sky. It was like a dark cloud that was slowly approaching Shu Hai City. "Emperor, there is an army of dead souls ahead." There are at least 100,000 of them. The leader seems to have a divine consciousness. His aura is extremely terrifying. Beside him, a female general in armor bowed and spoke in a solemn tone. She had been ordered to fight with these evil spirits. In the end, she found that not only were these evil spirits powerful, but they were also difficult to kill. Every time their bodies were shattered by spirit chi, they would quickly recover. An Empyrean realm evil spirit usually had to be shattered several times before it was completely destroyed. 100,000 evil spirits, Ling Qianma frowned. She was faintly worried. Her Yao Yu ancient dynasty had 100,000 soldiers. They were all cultivators. However, these soldiers were stationed at the borders of the ancient dynasty. It was impossible for them to appear on the battlefield at the same time. 100,000 evil spirits. This time, the Yao Yu ancient dynasty was in big trouble. Have you delivered the letters that I asked you to send out? Your Majesty, they have all been delivered. However, most of the ancient clans and immortal sects gave excuses. It is obvious that they do not wish to fight against the evil spirits with the Yao Yu ancient dynasty. The female general gritted her teeth, but she was powerless. All these years, the Yao Yu ancient dynasty had suppressed the ocean state with unparalleled heavenly might. With the thoughts of these sects, they most likely wanted to see the Yao Yu fall with their own eyes. It was impossible for them to send reinforcement. Yes, gather all the soldiers in the nearby city passes. Prepare to fight to the death. Ling Qianma nodded calmly, not surprised at all. Clearly, she had already guessed the situation before her. These immortal sects and ancient clans had been suppressed by the Yao Yu ancient dynasty for tens of thousands of years. Now that they finally had a chance to overthrow the Yao Yu ancient dynasty, why would they lend a helping hand? At the end of the day, the emergence of this evil spirit had exceeded Ling Qianma's expectations. However, the saints of the Yao Yu ancient dynasty were all suppressing the evil spirit in various places. The strongest patriarch of the dynasty was guarding the imperial capital to prevent any unforeseen events. One had to know that it was very likely that some people with ulterior motives would secretly sneak into the imperial capital and stir up trouble. In fact, even in the Yao Yu ancient dynasty, there might be people who wanted to seize the opportunity to seize power. The only person she could count on was herself. Qianma. Just as Ling Qianma was pondering and her eyes were filled with fatigue, a gentle voice suddenly came from behind her. Ling Qianma frowned slightly and turned to look at the man behind her. Her eyes flashed with surprise. Qin Fan, why are you here? That's right. The young man who had appeared before her was the #1 freeloader in the 9 states, King Xiaoyao. He was also Ling Qianma's husband, Qin Fan. His appearance could not be considered handsome. It was just extremely ordinary. He was the type that would not attract attention at all in a crowd. The outside world had many guesses about the reason for their marriage. However, no matter how they guessed, the world still could not figure out why the Empress of Ocean State would marry such a useless person. In fact, Ling Qianma had no choice but to choose Qin Fan as her husband. Many lords and ministers of the Yao Yu ancient dynasty had been persuading Ling Qianma to not have an heir. Because of this, the patriarch had even chosen several young talents for her to choose from. However, those people all had their own motives. Once Ling Qianma married them, she would have to be wary of them. Therefore, in the end, she had chosen this scholar who was traveling around the imperial capital. A person with no cultivation and no background would not be a pawn in someone else's hands. She did not need to be distracted and could just live peacefully with him. I heard that Shuhai City was in an emergency, so I came over. Qin Fan was wearing a white robe. His smile was clean and there was calmness in his eyes. In this year, he had not had any physical contact with Ling Qianma, but in Qin Fan's eyes, he and Ling Qianma were a true married couple. This was undeniable. Even though the Empress had often warned him not to have any improper thoughts, Chun Fan was gradually moved by this domineering and simple woman. "Is this a place you should come to? Do you think I'm not tired enough?" Lung Qianma snorted, dissatisfaction in her voice. She had no feelings for Qin Fan at all. It was just an excuse to shut the mouths of the ministers and the patriarch. Moreover, in Ling Qianma's eyes, his action of staying by her side was really childish. On the path to immortality, the winner takes all. How could she be touched? Don't worry. But what shocked Ling Qianma was that Chun Fan was no longer as timid and restrained as he used to be. He walked to her side calmly and looked at the mountains and seas in the distance. "If darkness falls, I will stand in front of you and kill until dawn." What? Ling Qianma's beautiful eyes narrowed. A trace of surprise appeared on her flawless face for the first time. She seemed to feel that Chun Fan was very different today. It was as if he was the real him now. No one could see through him. "Didn't I make myself clear?" Chen Fan smiled brightly and turned to look at the beautiful face close to him. "Nothing in this world can hurt you, evil spirits or demons. Because I won't allow it." What's wrong with you?" Ling Qianma took a deep breath. She clearly did not feel any energy fluctuation from Chun Fan. But there was an inexplicable sense of respect. "Nothing. I just wanted to live a carefree life and ignore the conflicts of the world. But you changed my mind in the end." Chapter 1475. Chun Fan, are you hiding something from me? Ling Qianma's tone wasn't as indifferent as before. She'd thought she could only count on herself. But Chun Fan's words made her think otherwise. Could it be that she'd misjudged him? Had this useless husband, who was usually sloppy, been hiding his strength? "No, I just don't want you to be so tired." Chen Fan shook his head and let out a mysterious smile. "That's right. Just as Ling Xiao had guessed, his strength wasn't as simple as it seemed on the surface. He used to be a creature that stood at the top of the 9 heavens. Back then, his body was shattered and all his cultivation was destroyed. But a strand of his divine soul accidentally escaped and entered Qin Fan's body, becoming an immortal mortal. But a year ago, he'd gotten a treasure by chance and awakened his memories. He'd gradually recovered his strength. Although his body couldn't cultivate spirit qi, it didn't mean his combat power was weak. On the contrary, ordinary saints were nothing in his eyes. Chun Fan had planned to wait until he got the real creation of this world before telling Ling Qianma his identity. However, this sudden turn of events forced him to change his plans. Because in his heart, Ling Qianma was already his wife. He wouldn't watch her die in the hands of the evil spirits. Oh! Ling Qianma was skeptical, but she still had a glimmer of hope. Boom! Suddenly, a shocking death qi appeared in the forest in the distance. Vaguely, there seemed to be countless evil figures standing under the envelopment of this deathly aura. Ling Qianma narrowed her eyes and said coldly, "They're finally here?" The entire Shuhai city fell into chaos. Countless armored guards walked up the city wall and stood behind Ling Qianma respectfully. But when they saw the figure standing side by side with Ling Qianma, shock appeared on everyone's faces. Unfettered king? Why was this piece of trash here? Emperor, we've discovered an army of evil spirits ahead. They're gathering in Shuhai City. In the distant void, a woman dressed in black stepped down from the sky and bowed in respect. Get ready to fight to the death." Ling Qianma nodded indifferently. Her eyes were filled with fighting spirit. Shuhai City was the first and only barrier of the Yao Yu ancient dynasty. Once the city fell, the vast plains behind it would become a fertile land for the evil spirits. Therefore, in this battle, they would either die or win. Boom! The wind and clouds suddenly changed. Above the city walls, rays of spiritual light lit up like the stars in the sky. They connected to form a formation that enveloped the entire city. On the other hand, Lung Qianma stood proudly in front of everyone. Spiritual might gushed out and she held a golden holy sword in her hand. Unlike the nervous faces of the others, Chen Fan's expression was extremely calm. Since it was an evil spirit, what was truly terrifying was not the spiritual energy of its physical body, but the aura of its divine soul that was filled with the will of death. Once a living being of flesh and blood came into contact with the death aura, they would quickly lose their minds and become a member of the evil spirit army. Until, at the end of the world, figures wrapped in death qi began to appear one after another. Ling Qianma's jade-like hand suddenly clenched the holy sword. The battle intent in her eyes boiled. She was like a valkyrie who wanted to punish all evil in the world. Ha ha ha! Soon, ghost qi began to appear behind the numerous ghost shadows. It was so dense that it covered the sky and earth. From afar, it looked like an ocean of death qi with surging waves. I'll kill their leader later. You guys be careful. Ling Qianma looked into the distance. Her voice was extremely cold. At this moment, she could sense that there were actually 3 saint stage powerhouses among the few ghostly figures in the lead. Among them, the strongest one was a 4th-grade saint realm expert. Ling Qianma's combat ability was enough to fight against a 3rd-level saint. But a 4th-level saint wouldn't be so easy. She didn't plan on returning alive from this battle. Qianma. Just then, Chen Fan suddenly turned his head. His expression was also grave. Those saints aren't the key to this battle. Hearing Chen Fan's words, many cultivators around showed disdain and mockery. A piece of trash without a shred of spiritual energy actually dared to speak so arrogantly. Those saints aren't the key to this battle. You are, aren't you? Even Ling Qianma looked at Chen Fan in confusion. Obviously, she was surprised. These evil spirits should be controlled by someone. Chen Fan's eyes were cold. There was no anger in them. He looked up at the mountain in the distance. Although his divine soul hadn't fully recovered, it had reached the 9th-level saint. In other words, it wouldn't take much effort for him to kill a few 3rd-level saints. At this moment, he could feel that there was a thin and weak figure standing behind the layers of death aura. It was him. He was controlling these evil spirit cultivators with his soul. Controlled by someone? Unfettered king, who can control 100,000 evil spirits. The female general in golden armor next to Ling Qianma narrowed her eyes. Her tone was a bit angry. The battle was imminent. He should be punished for deceiving people with lies. If Ocean State really had an overlord who could control 100,000 evil spirits, even if all the overlords of 9 states came, they wouldn't be able to do anything, let alone the Yao Yu ancient dynasty. 100,000 evil spirits. How terrifying would the divine soul power be? Maybe he's not from 9 states. Chen Fan ignored the general in golden armor. He was thinking about how to get past the 100,000 evil spirits and get rid of the culprit. Not from 9 states. Ling Qianma frowned. She immediately understood what Chen Fan meant. The gate of the upper world had been opened. During this time, countless talents from the upper world had come to the world of dead spirits to search for secret lands. Ocean State was at the edge of 9 states and adjacent to the Netherworld Sea, so no one paid attention to it. Even so, Lung Qianma still heard a lot of rumors. For example, an array formation talent had almost defeated all the sects in Azure State. Wherever he went, all the elites died. 3 beautiful women with transcendent temperaments, yet they were engaged in the shady business of robbing sections. Now, no matter which sect it was, upon seeing the 3 women, they would take the initiative to offer up their spiritual treasures to ensure that their sects would not be defeated. Of course, the most famous one was a young lord called Ling Shao. It was said that this person was extremely powerful and handsome. He not only killed thousands of demons in Yun State, but also destroyed the Blood Feather race, one of the 3 divine races, by himself. It was hard not to yearn for such a powerful and righteous young lord. Qianma, do you believe me? Inexplicably, Chen Fan's face lit up with love. Leng Qianma was obviously stunned for a second and felt a bit uncomfortable. What do you want to say? I'm here to kill the mastermind, but you have to cooperate with me. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.